Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Boy, I tell you, it's been a long week, and I just think to myself, I think about how depressed I get. You know how depressed I get, Ian, like the week of the Super Bowl, like
Sure.
Usually probably around.
I think we all do a little.
Yeah, Thursday of the Super Bowl. On Sunday, when I get to whatever city the Super Bowl's in, I act like I go to the Super Bowl every year. I've just been the last 2 years. Which, Ian, by the way, next year you may have to make the trip with me to New Orleans.
I would love that.
Saying. But every year I get to the Super Bowl and I get there, on Sunday or Monday or whatever, and I get to the Super Bowl and I'm so excited because the Super Bowl is basically like sports talk radio's mecca for the year. All the top people are there and very few bozos are there. And so it's usually a great time, whatever. And then, of course, there's all the different things going on Super Bowl. And so you get excited about, oh, my God, we're going to have this guy on the show. We're going to have that guy on the show. We're going to have all this stuff. And then by about Thursday of Super Bowl week, I start to get a little depressed. I honestly start to feel depressed because I know it's the last Fireball Hot Take Friday before the Super Bowl. And then what are we doing for the next, 20 weeks or whatever it is? It's a lot more than 20 weeks. It's more like 40 weeks. And, the combine comes and we get excited about that. And then there's the draft or the free agency. And then there's the draft and but as well as I do, there's a little part inside of you that dies or feels like is dying. So it mourns the football season being over. The old man used to say that he would never get depressed often, but every year after the football season, he'd get a little depressed. And I know that feeling. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we've made it because tomorrow at 11 a.m., we kick the football off. Georgia Tech versus Florida State. Even though I don't really care about either of the two teams, I kind of hate Florida State, but I thought they got screwed last year. Get excited that the football season, not this, preseason, which we'll get into the preseason in literally 20 seconds, but not the preseason that doesn't count. And every time something happens and we make a big deal about, it doesn't count, it's preseason. No. Real football tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. for Georgia Tech versus Florida State. Ian, you excited?
I mean, yeah, it'll be nice to actually watch some football that matters on the TV for once. So that'll be good.
It is some football that matters.
Not
it
that
is
I'm
very, very nice.
Huge fan of either team, but hey, a game's a game.
It could be worse. So I want to start on this today when it comes to the Titans. They play their preseason finale on Sunday against New Orleans. I told TD, I actually think that it is very, I said yesterday on the show, I said it's very comforting that it is a Sunday. Now the game's going to be at 1 o'clock, not at noon, which is when a Titans-Saints game would almost always kick off. I don't think that they usually play those games in prime time, though Keith Bullock did have, was it 3 interceptions Keith Bullock had in that Monday night game?
That sounds right, yeah.
I mean, he and Vince Young crushed it that night. But, again, that's usually not Titans-Saints, usually is a noon kickoff. But it'll be 1 o'clock on Sunday. And let me say this about the Titans game on Sunday. The first team offense needs to get it done. Like the first team offense needs to get it done. And I know we all want to see the first team offense get it done, but I'm really talking about like we need to feel confident outside of, well, it's just preseason and Brian Callahan will get it figured out, and it's going to be okay, and don't worry about it, and it doesn't matter, and it doesn't. No. And I don't know if the Saints are playing their starters or not. I have no idea. If they are, you need to score. If they're not, you need to score. Now, I do think it does make a difference if the Saints play their starters or not, because if the Saints play their starters and you go out there, get the ball, and you score, then it's like, okay, they scored versus a starting offense. But if I'm Brian Callahan, I'm playing those guys for 4 series tomorrow, waiting for something positive to end on. Because as Trevor once said to me, and I think it's very accurate, there's this odd belief of which comes first, confidence or success. And Trevor said to me, he goes, the argument that I would make is I would make that success actually comes before confidence. And I would agree. Now, some people are just naturally confident, but as far as actually being successful in something as big as football, you don't just wake up and say, I'm good. You have to go out there and do it. And for the Titans on offense so far, when it has seemed to kind of matter, they haven't been able to do it. The defense doesn't need to play. I don't think we'll see Harold Landry. I don't think we'll see Simmons. I don't think we'll probably even see Arden Key. We probably won't see Jamal Adams. We won't see Snead. We won't see Awuzie. I'm not sure if we'd see Kenneth Murray or not. I don't know. But it doesn't matter. Because the first team defense has all the confidence in the world. They played well against the Seahawks. They've played well against the first team offense. Simmons and Sweat and Landry and Key, those guys have confidence. The last time L'Jarius Sneed played real football, he was holding up the Vince Lombardi trophy. He's got confidence. Chidobe Awuzie has also played in the Super Bowl. He's got confidence. But the first team offense, it's all just a bunch of hoping and praying. We hope the left tackle will be good. We hope the left guard will be good. We don't know if the left guard's good or not. I have a lot of concerns about what I've seen so far. And last year, again, we go back to the excuses and the, oh, no, Jared, it was practice. It doesn't count. Oh, no, Jared, it was hot outside. Oh, no, Jared. We do that till the cows come home. And you all did that last year with the left guard. Oh, no, Jared, the left tackle and the center were bad. Not his fault. Oh, no, Jared, he lost weight from the appendectomy. Not his fault. Oh, no, Jared, Mike Vrabel's a terrible coach. Not his fault, Jared. You kept doing that. Well, we're not doing that this year. Let's get some confidence and replace what we see that's positive with the excuse making that is inherently, I think it's kind of condescending towards your own intelligence. The center, I'm not worried about. The right guard and the right tackle, we need to see them perform on Sunday. The young quarterback, we're hoping and praying when it comes to the young quarterback. DeAndre, Boyd, the 2 running backs I'm not worried about, but I do want them to play. Obviously, DeAndre's not going to play, but DeAndre, Boyd, and the 2 running backs I'm not worried about. Because those guys, I think, have done enough to have confidence in themselves to be able to feel like, hey, we're good. When the season starts, we'll be okay. But the offense is a lot. The real crux of the offense is DeAndre, Boyd, and the 2 running backs. And throw Ridley in there as well. The first team offense needs some positivity. They need positivity externally for you, the fans, where instead of, oh no, remember that one drill we had in that one walkthrough that nobody saw where we performed well? Yay! Forget about that. They need to have, hey, we went out there against the Saints. We marched it 9 plays, 72 yards, and we capped it off with a Tony Pollard touchdown. That's what they need so that they can go back and pack it up for 2 weeks and say, all right, we're ready to go. Bring on the Bears. And they need to feel that on Sunday. And you, the fans, you need to feel that on Sunday where you look out and you say, you know what? That offense looked like something that I can work with. And I know that I don't want to compare everything to last year, and everything last year was bad, and it was a different coach, and he was terrible and all that kind of stuff. But the New England preseason game, he put the offensive line out there. Don't worry, it'll be fine. He put them out there, and it was so bad that after the game, he got to the podium, and he was like, those guys have to have a big week of practice before we get ready to play the Saints. And in hindsight, and I think I kind of said this at the time, but in hindsight, it was too late. It was too late. So this is the week. The offense has reportedly not looked good in practice. They did not look good at practice when I was there. This is the week to do something about it. And God, I hope we start the show on Monday at 2 o'clock downright giddy about the performance of the young quarterback and downright giddy of the performance of the offensive line and everything else against the Saints. 615-737-1025 is our phone number on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. That's 615-737-1025. I need to see it. And I know I've been doing this long enough to know that if you don't see it, there's going to be a lot of, oh no, Jared, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I'm not doing the it's okay. We did it's okay last year. It wasn't okay last year. Offense has not been good enough so far. 615-737-1025. There is one thing that has not been good. That just simply has not been good for the Titans. But I'm actually okay with it. Maybe I'll regret this. But we'll get to that coming up next. It is a Fireball Hot Take Friday, 615-737-1025 here on our program, 615-737-1025. It's Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
Khaled said yesterday he did not run hard through the two deep balls.
Yeah.
I know Will kind of took the blame on the one throw. That's a bit concerning that a big ticket free agent who's supposed to be setting the tone is not running hard.
No, not really. It wasn't. I wouldn't credit it to not running hard. It just reminds me a little bit. You know, when Jamar Chase came in as a rookie in Cincinnati, there was a bunch of hoopla about how he forgot how to catch a football. And we couldn't hit him deep, and we couldn't connect, and he can't catch. And I think the same thing happened to Jerry Rice too, if I'm not mistaken. But some of these training camp ups and downs get a little bit magnified. I'm not overly concerned about the process. I think we're in the right place. Sure, I would like to hit one or two of them, but those things come, and I don't really overreact to that at all. I think yesterday was hot. Those guys' legs were dead. We were dead today. We cut practice pretty significantly because of it. So I would just say we're just continuing on as usual.
Boy, it would have helped Brian Callahan right there if he had just kind of stopped before he got into the yesterday it was hot. That was last week after the Seahawk practices. And the one thing I will say, and we crushed Brian Callahan for the Jamar Chase, Jerry Rice stuff, and rightfully so, because that was ridiculous. But I think I understand the point that Brian Callahan was making. And the point that he was trying to make when it came to Levis and Ridley is a lot of people are making a big deal about the fact that Levis and Ridley haven't connected. And it reminds me of when a lot of people made a big deal in Cincinnati about Jamar Chase couldn't catch. And trust me, Jamar Chase looked just fine and ended up catching the football. That's what I think Brian Callahan probably meant. And I may come to regret this eventually. But of all the things I am worried about with the Titans, the Levis-Ridley connection is the one that could be a massive concern. But I think I'm going to say they'll work it out. That what we've seen at practice, their inability to connect. TD even said one yesterday that Levis missed high on a ball for Ridley and he went up and he kind of got his hands on it, but he couldn't bring it down. Whatever. They're off. It'll work itself out and Calvin Ridley will be fine. Now, Calvin Ridley is not a number one receiver. He's not Justin Jefferson, but he is your number one receiver. And he needs to play like he is your number one receiver. And so it's easy to say today for me, well, they'll get it figured out. It'll be fine, which is what a lot of you default to with everything. Oh, right tackle. It'll work itself out. It will be fine. But for some reason, when it comes to the Levis and Ridley connection, I am going to put this on the it will be fine shelf. And maybe it's because I'm tired of complaining about things when it comes to the offense. So I'm going to take something that right now looks to be very alarming and just ignore it and just say, oh, they'll get it worked out. And maybe I'll regret this. But there is something to be said for Ridley's track record and the fact that his quarterbacks have been Matt Ryan and Trevor Lawrence. Again, not that Matt Ryan is bad, not that Trevor Lawrence is bad. I mean, between the two of them, they're worth about $800 gajillion. But they're also not Tom Brady. This isn't like when the Titans signed David Givens from New England, hoping that he was going to bring a little bit of that magic juice and secret sauce over. But I think I'm okay with letting it be and thinking that Levis and Ridley will be fine. Now, if I'm wrong about this, and this isn't if I'm wrong about this, I'm going to pretend like I didn't say this because I did say this today. But if I am wrong about this, you're going to hear a lot of pay what you owe because Calvin Ridley is being paid $25 million to be your number one receiver. And if Will Levis and he can't connect, that is a problem. But the coach says don't worry about it. First of all, the coach says don't worry about it with everything, and that's what makes it really hard to decide what not to worry about. Team stinks in 2 minutes, 2 weeks in a row. Every time they get out there in 2 minutes, they stink. And it's like, well, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. And then Levis and Ridley can't connect. Oh, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. Right guard and right tackle. Oh, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. Sadiq Charles walks away, leaves the team. Oh, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. And when you say that about everything, it makes it really hard for me to believe it on anything. But I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt here. And I'm going to tell you that when it comes to the Titans, I think they'll get it worked out. And I don't know what it is, but I think it's probably something that just takes time, takes reps, and takes both guys wanting to work at it. And it sounds, and I'm basing this off of an Instagram post the Titans made where Chris Harris, the DB's coach, was mic'd up and he was talking to Calvin Ridley. And he said to Calvin Ridley that he was the hardest worker he's ever seen in 19 years of doing this. I don't think that's made up. I think that means something, which means that Ridley's willing to work at it. And there's a chance that Ridley could make this a reality and be good. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com on the program. 615-737-1025. Alex from Franklin is mad today, Ian.
What happened?
Why can't the first text of the day be a positive text?
Yeah, start us off on a good tone.
Then again, you guys text in about why aren't you more positive, so I can't get mad about you not texting positive. Alex says, Jared, you are overreacting to yesterday like you always do. Overreacting to yesterday? I didn't even go out there yesterday. Here's what I don't like. What I don't like is they went up against the number one defense against Seattle last week, and they didn't do anything. They did not move the ball at all in any of the real meaningful scrimmage periods. Oh, but Jared, they ran a handoff on the first play of 11 period on Wednesday, and Tony Pollard ran it up the middle. Okay. A running play in practice. Woo! Now, when it came to putting the ball down and saying, let's scrimmage, they didn't do anything the first day. 3 offensive drives, and they didn't do anything against the Seattle ones. The second day, in the 2-minute drill, Will Levis threw 1 pass and got intercepted. Again, the coach, because this is what the coach does every time. Oh, no, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. And so then they come out the next week against their own defense, and they do the exact same thing. So I don't think it's an overreaction. I think it's just the reality that yesterday probably confirmed what happened the week before. And just know this, practice is all we have to go off of. They didn't play a single meaningful player outside of Nick Westbrook-Akine and Elijah Molden on Saturday against the Seahawks. Forget about that game. It didn't count. But so what we have to go off of is what we see in practice. And what we see in practice has just not been good enough offensively. Unless you guys are okay with scoring 13 points a game to begin the season. One texter says the quarterback situation is Vrabel and Robinson's fault. Just say it. You know what I'm saying is true. Can I ask how the quarterback situation, Ian, is John Robinson's fault?
The what situation?
The quarterback situation?
You think it's Robinson's fault?
That's what the texter said.
I can't go there.
How is it John Robinson? He didn't draft him.
He got fired anyways in the middle of the thing. Who knows what he would have done with the whole Tannehill and who he would have picked if he were the GM still.
So if I own the team, and again, I can only tell you what would have happened if I owned the team, John Robinson would have kept his job and would have been the GM of the 2023 season. And let's say nothing changed. Let's say the GM is so unimportant, which you know is not true, but let's just use that. And let's say that's the case. And John Robinson, they lost the last 7 games, and they go into the year, and they lose all the games last year, and they're picking 7th. Then I would have fired John Robinson. But there's no telling what he would have done. I mean, at that point, J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix or Bo Nix or one of these guys might be your quarterback. Because if you were that bad, you were picking 7th, and you didn't pick Levis last year, then you're starting over, clean slate, new GM, probably a new coach, and you're starting over and finding your guy. Maybe it's Kirk Cousins, who's the quarterback here. Maybe it's Sam Darnold, who's the quarterback here. But you know what I mean. I cannot blame John Robinson for the quarterback situation when he literally had nothing to do with the quarterback on the team. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get back to your phones. Again, the idea of, Jared, you are overreacting when all I'm saying is I want to see some positive momentum from the offense on Sunday, sometimes tells me that you guys, and I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying some of you guys, can just be massive crybabies. Oh, Jared, the offense hasn't done anything. How dare you be, I'm trying to think of the right phrase here. How dare you want to see them have success Sunday? 615-737-1025. When you know, you same people, if they go right down the field and score a touchdown against New Orleans on Sunday, you'd be looking, Levis, he's the man. Oh, they showed you, Jared. PT made every block. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. It's 1025, 106 through the game.
Indicated maybe play a handful of series on Saturday. What would you like to accomplish here, and how do you feel like the readiness level is a couple weeks out from the season?
I think we feel really ready. I think like we had the game plan for New Orleans given to us yesterday, like the intro to the base down stuff. And it's cool to see a game plan and be like, yep. Like pretty much feel like you can go out and play that day. So I feel like we're all in a really good spot with our knowledge of, what's at our hands playbook wise, and really do think we're in a really good spot. But I think in terms of goals for this weekend, it doesn't change. Just do my job, not trying to do anything too crazy, and just keep leading us and keeping drives sustained and making the right calls. So I'm excited to go out there and have another opportunity to be clean with our starters.
Will Levis talking about the New Orleans game on Sunday. And again, I just want to see some positivity. Did you see Anthony Richardson, Ian, against the Bengals backups yesterday?
I saw one touchdown, one pick six.
Bingo. So still kind of mixed one way or another. I do wonder if the Colts are going to ruin that kid, or already have, maybe. Who knows? One texter says on this Fireball Hot Take Friday, Levis is one of the best. What a great arm. And he has a mayonnaise commercial too. But we keep blaming his poor numbers and performance on a poor offensive line for another 2 to 3 years. So then we can give him a huge contract to justify what we want to believe and not what's actually true. I'm so tired of the way people keep taking responsibility away from him and always blaming the line. Yes, the line was a problem, but a truly great quarterback can often break through. Here's what I'll say about Levis. If Levis were to have posted the same stats and results as CJ Stroud last year, he would have gotten all the credit. Just like CJ Stroud gets all the credit. But it's not all CJ Stroud. How much of it's Laramie Tunsil? How much of it's Titus Howard? How much of it's Shaq Mason? How much of it was George Fant? How much of it was Nico Collins and Tank Dell and Robert Woods and Dalton Schultz and all those guys? It was a group effort. Bobby Slowick calling the plays. It's all those different things working together. And had he stunk like Bryce Young, they would have just put it all on him. So if Levis goes out this year and the offense is no good, even if it's the line's fault, it's going to be blamed on Levis. Because that's what happens in the NFL. Levis didn't get blamed last year. Vrabel got blamed. So this year, whether it's his fault or not, right now, the fans and the team are drinking the Kool-Aid. But whether it's actually their fault, that's a totally different discussion. So when you're like, well, why can't we blame Levis? Oh, you guys will blame Levis, even if it's not his fault. I remember the Saints game last year. Tannehill missed the throw to Chigakonkwo. I know. Now, again, with Chig, there's no guarantee he would have caught it. And I still think Chig didn't run through the ball at the beginning of it. But, are we really going to sit here and debate week 1 last year? The offensive line was terrible. And Tannehill wasn't ready for it because Vrabel didn't play him in the preseason. So he got hit early in the first half, and he was shell-shocked the entire game. We've seen the Titans with average pass rushers, with Derek Morgan and those guys. We've seen the Titans shell-shock Tom Brady before. So it happens to all of them. We saw the Titans in 2021 shell-shock Patrick Mahomes. So it happens. But who was the one that got blamed? It was Tannehill. That's the league. Andrew says, hey, Jared, if you had to guess, is the week 1 Titans offensive line going to be Latham, Skoronski, Cushenberry, Radens? And he puts MPF. We don't call him that on this show. What do we call him?
PT.
PT. Or do you think it'll be different? And what do you think about weeks 2 through 4 leading up to the bye? Well, I can't tell you what it's going to be in week 4. But I am going to tell you that it's going to be. The only way that it's not is if there is somebody that the Titans have been keeping their eye on. And I know they had some restructuring in the front office, so I don't know if Brian Gardner is now the head of pro scouting, if that's his job now, or if that's Kevin Turks, or I don't know who does that stuff. But the pro scouting side of this, there's the ones that are supposed to be watching the 3rd and 4th quarters of these preseason games and saying, hey, remember Johnny Joseph? We liked him 2 years ago in the draft. Well, he might be getting cut by Detroit. And if he gets cut by Detroit, we want to put a waiver claim in on him. And then, assuming this is Rand's call, who knows, given that we don't know what Chad Brinker does, maybe it goes into his 4 hours of tape watch. I don't know. Don't blame me. But you put that on Rand's desk and say, hey, we like Johnny Joe coming out. We think Johnny Joe fits what we're looking for. And we think he can play guard, and it doesn't look like Detroit's going to keep him. And then they can choose to make a waiver claim. I think there's a legitimate chance that there is a guy that is going to get cut by somebody else who is better than Dylan Radins at right guard. I do not think there is going to be a tackle who is better than Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT. I don't think there's going to be somebody out there that's better than PT that is going to be cut that can come in and play right tackle. If that isn't what happens, then it is going to be Skoronski, Latham, Cushenberry, Radins, and PT. One texter says, Jared, do you think that NWI and Jaquan Jackson will surpass Treylon Burks on the depth chart by the end of the season? So let's say DeAndre Hopkins is healthy for week 1, which Brian Callahan thinks is a legitimate possibility. Is Burks going to be active week 1 against Chicago? How many receivers are they taking up for the game? Are they going to take up 6 receivers? Or are they going to deactivate one? Because we know they're not going to, we know Ridley, Burks, and Boyd are active. NWI has to be active because NWI plays every position and NWI plays both special teams. So if one guy goes down, you know NWI can go into any of those spots. So he has to be active. It's like in baseball, you have to have an infielder that can play shortstop, second base, third base, etc. You have to have that guy. And then when it comes to Jaquan Jackson, he's going to be active because he's going to be returning punts and kickoffs, I would assume, unless they put Tajay Spears back there, which they have hinted at doing on their unofficial depth chart. That would be badass if they put Tajay Spears back there for that new kickoff.
I could see that in the regular season.
That they're saying, hey, we're not putting Tajay back there in a preseason game.
Correct.
But we will put Tajay back there to use his explosiveness against Chicago and in real games. I could see it. I could absolutely see it. So, but again, my point is that if the Chicago game were tomorrow and DeAndre's healthy, Boyd, NWI, Hopkins, and Ridley are for sure active. And Jackson's the punt returner. He's active. So that's 5 receivers. You could take 6 receivers into the game. Now, my guess is the Titans are so afraid of hurting Treylon Burks' feelings, and I don't know why, but the Titans are so afraid of showing anything that would remotely look negative towards Burks that they'd make him active and he'd play 4 snaps. But as of right now, you're asking me if NWI and Jackson are going to pass him on the depth chart. And I'm telling you, those guys will be active week 1. I don't know if Burks makes it to the final 48. For whatever that's worth. One texter says, what did the Titans look like in 2020 and the offense compared to now? We know the defense was bad, but that offense was great. Top 5. How did they look in training camp? I do not remember how the 2020 offense looked in training camp. Training camp that year was kind of weird. As far as like what you saw and what it was reported and what was, because there were only a certain amount of people that were there, and then there were, 2 people that could actually walk around and cover practice, and everybody else was kind of stuck in one area. And the only memory I have 2 memories of training camp 2020. I take it back. I have 3. One, I have Dave McGinnis in my head of telling me hey, no IEs, no instant evaluations. It's not just one practice, Jared. You can't make an instant evaluation. Okay, Coach Mack said it, so it must be true. And then Floyd showed up one day and was like, I'm cutting the kickers. And I was like, but Dave McGinnis said no instant evaluations. And he goes, I coached special teams for 20 years. I watched Joseph miss a 35-yarder from the right hash. It happens. Make the adjustment, follow through, make the kick, move on. He missed it again. If I was GM, Steven Gostkowski would be in my office this afternoon. Ha, ha, ha. And then I remember Darrington Evans kept fumbling the ball. You remember the nickname I gave Darrington Evans at training camp, Ian?
No, I can't think of it.
Petey from Remember the Titans.
That's right.
Because remember Petey in the movie Remember the Titans. And I'm not a guy who makes movie references, because every time some guy tries to get on the radio and make movie references, it's like that one movie, Skeletor, where you know what I'm talking about. And it's like, no, dude, I haven't seen Skeletor, whatever the hell that is. But everybody's seen Remember the Titans. Petey was the running back who couldn't hang on to the ball, and so they put Petey on defense. And maybe the Titans should have tried that with Darrington Evans. I don't know. One texter says, I never understood letting go of a general manager during the season. If it was just about roster and trade issues, it makes you question the upper leadership of the organization. I think I've told this 100 times, But that was the moment that I started to have my doubts. Like, that was when all of a sudden we talk about, are we concerned? Are you concerned? What do we make? That was when I started to have my doubts about, as the texter puts it, upper management. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the show. There is one side of this when it comes to the Titans on Sunday against the Saints that I absolutely, positively do not care about. Like, I can tell you right now, I do not care about it. We'll get to that coming up next. Tune into 94.9 The Fan today as the Sounds take on Jacksonville at 6:35. Coverage is available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Sounds baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks Family Leisure, 5 Points Roofing, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. And by the way, speaking of 94.9, we have added, Ian, another station to our unbelievable repertoire.
Keep them coming.
So I don't know all the details because I guess the press release came out and I haven't seen it. But you would know the details of 8:30 a.m. better than I would, Ian.
Yeah, I probably know a little bit more of them. Just another outlet that we're going to be having some of our sound simulcast games, some of the other coverage, some of our other, just some extra frequency stuff when we have 94.9s packed and we have college football season coming up. We'll have 8:30 for you.
And that will be part of the Game Sports Network, which we're very excited about. So I was told the press release was dropping at 2. I obviously was on the air, so I have not read it. But I don't need to read it because I am very, very excited about 8:30 a.m., 94.9, of course, right here, 102.5, and the Game Sports Network.
Harold kind of rotating in with the onesie side. What have you seen from both those guys, and what are you looking to see when they're with the onesie?
Yeah. Two things. I mean, there's a run game part of it when they're rotating, the physicality, being able to set the edge and play physical in a run game. Both of those guys do that well. And then there's the pass rush part of it, is where they coming in to spell Arden and Harold. And then what does that look like? Are they being productive? Obviously, Jalen's had production in the games, sacking the quarterback. But so far, I've been really pleased with the way those guys have played, Jalen in particular. And Weave's really been really physical against the run in the games, which has been good to see. So I think we got a good mix of guys there in those 3 and 4 spots at the outside linebacker position.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan talking about the defense. And let me just say this on Sunday against the Saints. Now, look, I think I speak like for most Titans fans, or I speak similarly to how most Titans fans speak, which is when the Titans go out there on Sunday, I want the first team offense to go out there and to go dominate. And then I want the first team defense, if they're out there, to dominate. But if it's the second team defense, I still want them to do well. I just don't get upset anymore when Trey Avery is out there in a preseason game giving up 30-yard passes. And I'll be very upset when Trey Avery goes out there in a regular season game, if he is in fact out there and gives up a 30-yard pass. But let me just say this about the defense. I don't necessarily need to see them on Sunday. Now, I already know Brian Callahan has said Landry and Simmons are not going to play in the preseason. I assume if Landry and Simmons aren't going to play, Arden Key's probably not going to play either. We know that L'Jarius Sneed is not going to play and Chidobe Awuzie is not going to play. I assume Jamal Adams will not play. I don't know if Quandre Diggs will play or not, but this is a long-winded way of me saying I'm not worried about the defense. The defense has played well in training camp. The defense played well in the practices against the Seahawks. And they're all veterans. And I know how good Harold Landry is. And I know how good Jeffrey Simmons is, although it's not as good as a lot of you think. And I know how good that L'Jarius Sneed is when his knees are healthy, which I think they probably are. And I know how fine. The defense is fine. Offense, I mean, if they go out there and he plays them 12 snaps again and they don't look impressive against the Saints starters, then I'm going to be a little disappointed. Defense, I mean, I don't care. Especially because, again, I don't expect to see Landry, Simmons, or Sneed, and those are by far the 3 best players on the Titans defense. 615-737-1025. One texter says if the Titans start 2-6 and Levis is above average but not elite, what does the rest of the season look like? Do we let Brian Callahan go get his guy, or do we open the new stadium without Levis as a starter and a new head coach in 2 years? That is a lot of projecting right there. And I'm not saying projecting your feelings, but I am saying a lot of projecting of what's going to happen. There's too much of this sometimes where you guys are like, oh, Jared, what's going to happen? Or, oh, Jared, we're 1-3. Let's tank for the draft. It's like, whoa. The 2002 Titans, which I, to this day, think is the second best Titans team in my lifetime. The best Titans team was the 2000 Titans. The second best Titans team, in my opinion, was 2002. They got to the AFC Championship game. They lost to the Raiders in Oakland, and they started the year 1-4, and they ended 11-5. And you'll say, but what about the 99 team that went to the Super Bowl? I think they're third, and I think it's very close. But I thought that 2002 team was really good, and they just fumbled the ball twice at the wrong time in the AFC Championship game. Because that team could beat you through the air as well as run the ball, and they both had great defenses. For whatever that's worth. So, again, when it comes to the Titans, if you start 2-6, before, instead of just all the projecting of, oh, Jared, what's going to happen? Oh, Jared, gosh, tell me. If the Titans start 2-6, and he says, and Levis is above average but not elite, that's really hard for me to envision happening. Number one, we blame winning and losing on the quarterback. There's one quarterback in the NFL who people think is good who doesn't win. It's Justin Herbert. Other than that, we don't think Tua is very good. We don't think Trevor Lawrence is very good. Even a guy like Jalen Hurts, I mean, I got questions about when it comes to Jalen Hurts. So when you say if they're 2-6, but Levis is good, what do? That would mean that the defense has to absolutely be horrendous. And I just told you, I don't think that the defense is going to be horrendous. We talk about this team. If anything's going to happen for this team to be successful, it's going to be because it's carried by its defense. So if he's 2-6, what are they going to do? If Levis bombs this year, then they'll move on. Think about what Atlanta did with Desmond Ridder. What's infinitely more likely is what Joe Rexrow, the high school football savant, said on the Robbie and Rexrow program, which is we're probably sitting in the same spot a year from now saying, okay, this is the year that Levis decides whether or not he's the guy. And I hate that because it's, to me, the same thing. Jack says, your boy Anthony Richardson, your quarterback takes or something else. Richardson joins Kenny Pickett in your Hall of Fame. Anthony Richardson's not a bust yet, guys. And not only that, I said when the Colts drafted him, I said the only thing that could get in the way is Indy ruining him. And Ian, back me up on this. Did I not say when it came to Richardson that I would have drafted him and I would have walked right to that podium and declared Gardner Minshew the starter?
I believe that is what you said.
And I would have put him on the bench and I would have had him learning instead of getting killed out there last year. I mean, Kirk Herbstreit's doing the broadcast last night on Amazon, and he's like, I mean, if Anthony Richardson struggles, don't you think they should put Joe Flacco in there? I'm like, what are you talking about? He is 22 years old, and he's played 4 games in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes sat on the bench for a year. He turned out okay. So let's not write Richardson off as a bust. And it's not like Indy doesn't have a reputation for having ruined potential franchise star quarterbacks. But I'm not ready to sit there and just say, oh, yeah, Anthony Richardson, he's no good. I was wrong about that. First off, they let a touchdown drive right down the field to begin the game. And secondly, we just don't know. And I hope Anthony Richardson doesn't become a star because I am tired of Indy having a great quarterback. Now, they haven't had one in a while, but you know what I mean. 615-737-1025. One texter says, let me say I love Simmons, but I'm a bit aggravated how Big Jeff is a sacred cow around here. If he isn't a lot more like Chris Jones wrecking games this year, I'll be very disappointed of him and his contract. That's going to be like a big Titans thing that I think is possible. We got a little breaking news. According to Elliot Friedman, NHL insider, saying not sure yet of all the particulars, but it sounds like Yaroslav Askarov is being traded from Nashville to San Jose. Ian, how about that?
Well, he had requested a trade.
He had requested a trade, and again, according to Elliot Friedman, it looks like he got one. So not sure yet of all the particulars, but it sounds like Askarov is being traded from Nashville to San Jose. Well, I kind of need to know the particulars, Elliot. It's Fireball Hot Take Friday on Stillman and Company. We'll hit that on the other side, or at least what we know of it, and then we'll get back to your phones. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Fireball Hot Take Friday. Breaking news on the Predators front. The Predators have traded Yaroslav Askarov to the San Jose Sharks, according to Elliot Friedman. So what have they traded him for? We don't know yet. Ian, are you working the Twitter just to keep that up in case somebody tells us what it ends up being?
Yep.
So here's what I will say on the Yaroslav Askarov front, because I don't have an opinion of this trade until we know what the return is. Because if it's like, hey, the Predators have traded Yaroslav Askarov to San Jose, and in return they received Macklin Celebrini, well, I'd like to say that's a pretty good trade. Now, we know that's not what it is. But I do think that this probably goes back to the draft. And I'm not talking about this year, but I'm talking about last year. When San Jose picked fourth, and there were 4 elite centers that were available. There was Connor Bedard. There was Leo Carlson. There was, is it Adam Fantilli?
Yep.
And then there was Will Smith. And the Predators wanted one of the 4. And Barry Trotz offered 3 first-round draft picks and Yaroslav Askarov to try to get Will Smith, who was a top centerman. San Jose said no. But it is obvious that San Jose was interested at the time in Yaroslav Askarov. Then they got the number 1 pick and drafted Macklin Celebrini. And so I do wonder, I looked at, when we were, in the break, I was looking up the San Jose prospects, trying to see, hey, what are they deep in? Because I'm trying to, okay, what prospects do you think you'd get in return, or picks, or whatever it may be? And as I was looking through it, they have a lot of centers that would be available at San Jose. So it won't be Smith or Celebrini, but I could see it being somebody else. And what is this one thing? What is the one thing that we talk about every time when it comes, Ian, to the Predators and what it is they're looking for and what it is they want and what it is they don't have? They don't have centers. Like, they don't have centers. Right now, their number 2 center is Tommy Novak, and he might, I hate to say it, he might stink. Like, he might stink. So I have no opinion on the Askarov trade. Somebody texted and said, do the Sharks have anyone worth trading for? Yes. And they got draft picks, and they got the Sharks have been rebuilding for like 6 years. So everything they've gotten, when they've dealt away Erik Karlsson, or when they've dealt away Thomas Hertl, or when they've dealt away, they traded Brent Burns, right?
San Jose, I believe, I don't know if they traded him or if he left. I'm not sure, but he's not there.
They've been rebuilding forever. So they got tons of draft picks and tons of young prospects and tons of, I'm telling you, they got young assets. And I believe they have a bunch of crap they got from Vegas in the Hertl deal last year. I believe they got some center prospect, Edstrom, in the deal. They got a first-round pick in the deal. They got some other stuff in the deal. So I do wonder if they got, a young center prospect, a young defense prospect. Defense is something that they were kind of looking at. And then they drafted Mullendijk in 2023. But this team, I know they took the Stiga kid in the second round, but this team could definitely be looking for a centerman. So, I can't have an opinion on this trade until I know what Barry Trotz has gotten in return. Here's the other thing, though, I am going to say. Barry Trotz, and I don't talk to Barry Trotz much at all outside of what you hear on the air. So it's not like, Barry and I sat on the back of the school bus and talked about it, and then we talked about it. I mean, the conversations Barry Trotz and I have, every now and then we'll bump into each other at the arena or something, and it'll be a how you been kind of thing, but it's really not like we have much of a relationship outside of what you hear on the air. Now, I love Barry, and I hope the feeling is mutual, but I don't know. But Barry Trotz's demeanor towards Askarov changed significantly, in my opinion, between February and July. And I don't know what it was, but I do know this. Ian, you remember when I went on those Carl Taylor rants when they kept benching Askarov in the playoffs?
Mm-hmm.
Well, somebody told me, somebody who I would say is in the know, told me Askarov's behavior was the kind of behavior that wasn't going to fly. That it wasn't like Carl Taylor went rogue and benched Askarov, which we know he didn't do. But it's not like that's what happened. Barry was very much in the loop with Troy Grossneck playing those AHL playoff games. And that the behavior of Askarov in the playoffs was probably not that of what the Predators would have expected. And you guys probably know Barry Trotz well enough to know that's the kind of stuff. An analytics GM that only looks at numbers and only looks at point value added per goal, save, exception, whatever, probably doesn't care about that stuff. But Barry's a coach. And Barry, if he doesn't like you, I think it was what Corey Curtis said on the program when Barry cut Matt Duchene. And Corey said, who we're going to talk to in about 5 minutes. And Corey said, the one thing he's learned about covering Barry Trotz all the years that he was the coach was, hey, if Barry Trotz, he'll give you every opportunity and he'll treat you with respect and he'll really, he'll stand up for his players. But if he doesn't think you fit in, you won't be around very long. And that is the one thing that I could tell was Barry's tone and Barry's demeanor changed about Askarov from February into July. And I can't tell you when it did, but I think it is pretty obvious that Barry made his choice with UC Saros. And that's why I kept saying, again, I love Willie to death. But when Willie was talking about, no, why can't they have Saros and Askarov at the same time? And I kept saying, the decision has to be made on July 1st. There is a deadline to this. And then once we saw the details of the trade protection on the Saros deal, they had made their choice. And I said this on Monday. I understood where Askarov was coming from. I got it. Like, I know why he's upset. He's 22. He thinks he's ready for the NHL. He's probably not ready for the NHL, but he thinks he's ready for the NHL. And the Predators just extended Saros by at least 8 years, really 9. Justin Greenbrier says, I am really shocked by the news. Barry Trotz made that statement, and I just assumed he was going to make Askarov report and play ball. He really must have been making a stink for this trade to happen. Again, we don't know what San Jose sent in return. Somebody texted me and said, keep an eye on Philip Bystead as the return, one of their top prospects outside of Celebrini and Smith, and he plays center. I think it's probably one step down from their top prospects. What I wonder is how attached they are to the kid they got from Vegas. That's what I want to know. Because he was Vegas's top prospect, and he was a center when Vegas made the move on the Thomas Hertl deal. One texter says, idiot move by Barry Trotz. Askarov will become an elite goalie and win some cups, and Saros will never get through the playoffs. Let me say this. When it comes to the Predators, that is the one thing that I am scared to death of. Is that it is ultimately going to be UC Saros. They've made their bed. It's going to be Saros. And as much as I know, this is like the quarterback, and do we blame the offensive line? Do we blame the coach? Do we blame the receivers? Do we blame and at the end of the day, the quarterback is part of it. But he always gets the blame or the love if the team wins or loses. Goalie's the same way. And ultimately, it is about the quarterback. And I am worried that when it comes to Saros, that he's just not good enough to win the playoffs. And that is why he never does win in the playoffs. And so I am truly, truly scared to death of that. We got any updates, Ian? We got anybody telling us what this return is going to be?
No return. Oh, we have a trade to announce. Okay, from the Preds.
Okay. So this is the trade. Nashville receives David Edstrom. So again, that was the Vegas kid they got. David Edstrom, Magnus Sharona, who's a goalie.
Krona, I believe.
Krona, a 2025 conditional first-round draft choice. And San Jose gets Yaroslav Askarov, Nolan Burke, and the Colorado third that they acquired by dealing Yakov Trenin at the trade deadline.
2025 third, yep.
So it's Edstrom. You say it's Krona?
Krona.
Magnus Krona, a young goalie. Who cares? And that's a toss-in for a conditional first-round draft choice. I believe the conditional first-round draft choice, have they explained what the conditions are on this? My guess is it's probably protected. So when it comes to the protection, I know they have Vegas's first. So I wonder if that's the conditions here. Let's see. Barry Trotz say okay, here you go. In the event that Vegas's first round selection, previously acquired by San Jose, falls within the top 10, San Jose has the rights to transfer either its first pick or Vegas's to Nashville. So the Predators got Vegas's first round choice in next year's draft. So it is Edstrom, Vegas's first, unless it's top 10, and then they can shift it to San Jose's. But it is infinitely more likely that it is San Jose's pick that ends up in the top 10. Vegas is that's not going to be a top 10 pick. But the Predators are going to have, if I'm counting this correctly, Ian, they're going to have 3 first-round picks in next year's draft. Because I believe
3 in the first, 2 in the second, and 1 in the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth.
I believe they have Tampa Bay's first-round pick for Tanner Jeannot.
Yeah.
Oh, what a terrible trade for Tampa.
Krona is 23, so also a younger kind of AHL guy.
I do have the Scott Wheeler breakdown of David Edstrom. He is a 19-year-old centerman out of Sweden. He has not played in the AHL yet. He was ranked as Vegas's, I actually already said this, he was ranked as Vegas's #1 prospect at the time of the Hurdle trade. He would have ranked at about 4 or 5 with San Jose, but they do have a lot of centers. This is according to Scott Wheeler in March of this year. Quote, Edstrom was a steady riser in his draft year last season. He was one of Sweden's best players as their first-line centra at the U18 Worlds after a good season split between Frölunda's J20 and SHL team, whatever the hell that means. Swedish Hockey League, I guess. Establishing himself as a borderline dominant player against his peers and demonstrating he can hang against men. This year, he has played a regular role in the SHL and centered Sweden's third line, though they were used like a second line at the World Juniors. Again, playing alongside his U18 Worlds line mates of Otto Stenberg and Felix Unger-Surum, he was the least impressive of the 3 and a little quiet. That's not good. His stride is a little stilted, and he's not a great skater. I think it was overrated in his draft year, and he has talked to me about that they need to work on it. But he's good in a very effective way. He can also play with power or skill, which blends to allow him to take pucks off the wall inside and then execute in congested areas in ways you wouldn't necessarily expect out of a 6'3" player. Okay, I like the 6'3" part. He'll make a soft area play 1 second and a play in tight to his body the next, and then drive out of those plays the next. At an early age, it is also clear that he has a really mature understanding of how to use his size to his advantage, and he looks to dictate with his length and knows how to position himself against defenders. He's decent on entries and will hold pucks, but can also play off of his line mates. It's not flashy, but Edstrom projects as a solid third-line centra who can potentially contribute on both special teams. So it sounds to me like he projects to be like a Colton Sissons, right? From what the guy from The Athletic said?
Maybe a little bit better.
We'll ask Corey what he thinks. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Again, this is the deal. The Predators pick up a former first-round draft choice who was Vegas's top prospect, who was traded to San Jose, who Adam says as of right now, according to The Athletic, is not a top 100 prospect. But they receive him and Vegas's first-rounder next year, along with a throw-in goalie for Askarov, a third-rounder, and Nolan Burke, who I think is also a throw-in. 615-737-1025. Corey Curtis next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Breaking news, the Predators have made it official that they have dealt Yaroslav Askarov and a third-round pick and a throw-in, Nolan Burke, to San Jose in exchange for one of the center prospects that San Jose has. Not one of the good ones, Will Smith or Macklin Celebrini, but they ended up getting probably a second-tier center prospect in David Edstrom, Vegas's first-round pick in next year's draft, and Magnus Krona, a goalie throw-in, a young 23-year-old goalie. Ian, you said that basically that was the package that Vegas dealt in order to get Thomas Hertl.
Yes, according to our own Max Hurst.
So basically what Vegas dealt to get Hertl, the Predators then took for Askarov. What do we make of it? Corey Curtis, News 2, joins us now on the program, and we may be getting Barry Trotz on the show. We don't know yet, but we may be trying to get Barry on today. Corey joins us now on the program. He'll be on the sideline for the Preds and the Saints, so we'll get to that in a second. But, Corey, your reaction to the Yaroslav Askarov drama of the week and the trade that just went down.
Well, I'm surprised he didn't ask to be traded sooner, because I would have. I mean, I would have asked to have been traded, as soon as they signed Wedgwood, because the message was clear. You're not a part of our future at this point. So they got a first round pick, and I think that was the important thing to get. I think I think they lost probably some. I don't know. Barry probably disagree with this. You probably lost a little bit of your weight in the deal because he demands a trade. You've shown he's not going to be playing for you, and so you need to get something for him. And so they got something for him, and I think that's probably best for everyone at this point.
So I was told by somebody, again, who would know better than I do, that Edstrom is now considered the Predators' top center prospect. We've talked forever about the need for centers in this organization.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right now, Tommy Novak's probably going to center that second line with Stamkos and Marchessault. But you and I both know Tommy Novak is not the caliber of those two other players. I actually kind of view that as a win. You take the area of strength and you go get, even if, let's say, Askarov is a 9 out of 10 prospect and this guy is an 8 out of 10 prospect, I still think for organizational balance, once you've given Saros the deal, I actually don't think that's a bad trade-off, plus the first-round draft choice.
Yeah, well, you've got to give something to get something. And so you get the first-round pick. And like you said, if it's a 9 for an 8 and a first-round pick, I would view that as a win as well. And this team has been starved for centers in their organization for a long time. Is Wood center or wing?
Wood is a wing who they say can play center. You know how that works.
Yeah, so he's not a center.
Correct.
Because if he was a center, he'd be a center. So yeah. So I mean, you go and you get something you want, then I think it's a good deal. You know, you also, you send him off to a team that's a bit of a ways from being any good. He'll get to play. He'll be happy. So yeah, I mean, you get something in return. And look, now that Mitch Korn's back in the fold, I kind of trust what he has to say about whatever goalies they bring in. He's got to see something in the kid.
Corey Curtis is with us from News 2. Again, the Predators have traded Yaroslav Askarov to San Jose for a center prospect who is now the Predators' top center prospect and Vegas's number 1 draft choice. There's some other details to the deal, but that's kind of the gist of it. What do you make of the fact that Barry Trotz now has 3 first-round draft choices, and they may be getting $4 million back on the cap based upon the Ryan Johansson contract termination in Philadelphia? Given the Cody Glass trade, Corey, I think the Predators we talk about what they did on July 1, they could be dropping bombs at the trade deadline. What do you make of it?
They could be dropping bombs. They could also get what Barry Trotz has been after, and that's a top 5 pick. He's made efforts to work up into the top 5 to get that kind of player. Well, here he is with another first-round pick, and they need to get younger. I mean, they've got Stamkos, they've got O'Reilly, and they've got Marchessault. None of those guys are babies, all right? So they need a hot young scorer that can come up in the next 2 or 3 years to help this team out. So yes, they could make a move at the trade deadline, but they also could be armed for the draft to try to move up into the top 5.
I was thinking this in my head when it comes to the Predators and this move. And I mean, we're not going to know until we see Askarov get to the pros and we end up seeing who has the better career kind of thing. But when it comes to the trade, Corey Curtis with us, when it comes to the trade, don't you think this was kind of inevitable after Askarov got benched and they signed Saros?
As soon as they signed Saros, this was happening. I mean, and especially when they signed Wedgwood to a 2-year deal, you knew this was happening. This was that's why I said I'm surprised that he didn't ask for a trade like right after free agency began. If I was his agent, I'd be like, hey, we're good enough to play in the NHL. We can make some money, and we're not going to make money because we're going to be stuck in the AHL for 2 more years. I mean, you're taking years off of his career, and you can argue he's got to earn his way there, and that's a perfectly fair argument. But San Jose is going to give him an opportunity, and there's other teams that would give him an opportunity to play on the NHL level. And so I don't blame the young man and his agent for wanting to get paid. Could he have done more to help himself? Perhaps. But he was also with the team with a pretty good one, and that made it a little more problematic.
Am I wrong, Corey, for thinking this is probably fair value, given the fact that Askarov is not ready for a full-time role in the NHL, and that most of the teams that would be trading for a goalie want to win right now, And so if the
Mhm.
guy's not ready for a full-time role in the NHL, they probably don't want to make that kind of trade. And so you're going to get probably a low first rounder because Vegas is probably going to make the playoffs this year. And then after you get the low first rounder, you're also going to get a guy who's going to be your top center prospect. So it's really 2 prospects in exchange for your 1 prospect. I kind of feel like that's probably a fair trade. And I don't want to sound like a homer here, but I don't have a problem with that, given that once they made the choice with Saros, which I'm not sure is a choice I would have made, but given that that's the choice they made, I kind of feel like it's the best of the situation.
I would agree, because they had to get something for him. For him to sit down in Milwaukee doesn't add value to this team. That's the way I feel. Like I said, I'm sure they could push back on that and make a perfectly reasonable argument. But him playing 2 or 3 more years down in Milwaukee doesn't make this team better. But getting yourself a first-round pick and another guy who can play in the NHL, gives you the opportunity to do more. We take at face value that it's a first-round pick, all right? But what happens if they can parlay this pick with other picks to get into the top 5?
Yeah.
Then suddenly it's a lot more important. It's like the Bears trade when they traded number 1 to the Panthers. Yes, they got the first pick. They got Caleb Williams this year, so they got a much better quarterback. They also got DJ Moore in that trade.
Yeah.
They also got a 4th-round pick in that trade, which became Keenan Allen. And suddenly that trade looks even better. So, yes, they got value. They got monetization with it, and it's now what Barry does with it that really tells you whether they won this deal or not. Who knows? I mean, maybe Askarov is a top 5 goalie in this league, and we'll see. And you'll look and go, wow, could have done that. But if they thought he was a top 5 goalie in the league, they wouldn't have paid Saros.
Yeah, Corey Curtis is with us news too. How much are the starters playing on Sunday, Corey?
I would look into the second quarter. I would think a good 3 drives.
Really?
I think, especially on offense, because look, Simmons isn't going to play, Landry's not going to play, and the 2 corners aren't going to play on defense. So it's not going to be a complete look on the defense. The concern is on the offense that is a young group, especially up front, where you've got Skaronski and Latham on the left side, and Radens and Petit Frere on the right side. That's a young group. That group needs to play. And of course, the quarterback is young as well. And so I think that is the concern, that if those guys need to get out there and get some symmetry and some cohesion together in some live fire activity. And so I think, that's the reason for playing those guys a little bit extra. Like, if they don't have the Seahawks here for 2 days scrimmaging, they play in the second preseason game as well. They need snaps, they need time together, and that's why they're going to be out there for extended. Look, and they get 2 weeks off.
Are you already in New Orleans? When do you make the trip down?
No, I leave tomorrow early in the afternoon.
Oh, you flying with the team, or do you fly?
Oh, no. Ken Wisenhunt kicked us off the plane, and we never returned.
Really?
Yeah.
You were good with Mike Mularkey. You couldn't get Mike Mularkey to let you back on the plane?
The organization, that was after Amy took over. And believe me, I'm in very good terms with Amy. She's amazing. And by the way, from what I understand, an amazing pickleball player.
Okay.
But the organization became a bigger business after Amy got involved. And so those seats on the plane quickly disappeared.
We need those for business purposes. Fireball Hot Take Friday. What's your hot take this week?
I brought up the Chicago Bears as the Titans play in the opener. And the preseason results are preseason results, and the Bears rolled it up in the preseason. The Lions rolled it up in the preseason the year they went 0-16. So I'm not basing it on that. I'm basing it on the Bears have built a roster, and they've got a quarterback. I think they're going to the playoffs. I think they're a big problem week 1.
Okay. Corey Curtis is a homer. We know that.
And for years I've told you the Bears are terrible.
That is true.
All right.
He thinks they're a problem now. We shall see. I think the problem might be your own offensive line going up against the Bears. But, again, we shall see.
That Bears defense was a top 5 unit to finish the year last year after Eberflus took it over.
Yeah, Eberflus I could do without. Corey, great stuff.
I could do without him as well, but he's who I got. So me and Fluss are rolling this year.
There you go. Corey Curtis, News 2, as always. Corey, we look forward to seeing you on the sidelines one last time on Sunday afternoon.
Yep, look forward to it. 1 o'clock on News 2. It's an early kick. Oh, and by the way, so everybody knows, be there at 1, because normally we kick off at like 106, 107, 6-7 minutes in. It's a 102 kick. It's the shortest pregame of all time.
Okay. We might not even do the anthem, I guess. I don't know.
No, the anthem's at 12:56.
Oh, okay. He's got the sheet in front of him. Corey, safe flight.
All right, thanks.
Yep, Corey Curtis joining us on the program. Okay, Barry Trotz will join us at 4 o'clock today. So again, the news is the Predators have traded Yaroslav Askarov to the San Jose Sharks. They've gotten a guy that wasn't San Jose's top center prospect, because San Jose has 2 of the top center prospects in the league, but he will be your top center prospect, the former Vegas #1 prospect, David Edstrom, and Vegas's first-round pick that is top 10 protected and could be shifted to San Jose's first-round pick if it's inside the top 10. And Barry Trotz will join us at 4 o'clock with his thoughts on that. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. So I do have kind of a couple of just quick thoughts on this trade. We'll get right back to your phones. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Let's talk about Hiller. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They are fabulous. And summer is over, and it's time to get ready for school to start. So even though the kids are headed back to school, you can leave the homework that you got to get done in your home. You know it. I know it. We hate having it, but it is reality. To Hiller. This month, enjoy back-to-school savings with offers like a $99 drain cleaning, $500 off select high-efficiency HVAC systems, $500 off a new tankless water heater, $1,000 off whole home generators, and more. Visit happyhiller.com today for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Do you think, Barry, that, say, when you're projecting out 4 years from now, that it is feasible? At this point, Askarov would be 25 years old. Do you think it's feasible that 4 years, 5 years from now, both Saros and Askarov could still be on the team? Or when it's that long term, then it really has to be one or the other.
I think at that point it has to be one, probably at one or the other. Yeah, I don't think it's feasible. I mean, look back at you look at in the past, Vancouver had Luongo and Schneider, and there's probably some other ones. Boston's going through it with Allmark and Swayman, and I do know this, that if you don't have a goaltender, you want one, and if you have two good ones, you have a chance to win every night.
That was Barry Trotz talking about, hey, at some point I'm going to have to make a choice. And I keep thinking about this, about what the Predators did. And the move is Yaroslav Askarov to San Jose. They get David Edstrom, who was Vegas's top prospect when they traded him as part of the Hurdle deal. He was, I believe, the 4th or 5th top prospect in San Jose's system, but San Jose's so terrible, they're loaded. And he will be, from my understanding, Ian, he would be the Predators, or he is now, the Predators' top center prospect. We're going to ask Barry at 4 o'clock about that.
Cool. Yeah.
But I was thinking about what the Predators now have. The Predators now have, we think, one of the top contenders in the league. I mean, I think it was Adam Vingan said that this team, where they are right now, how they are built, this is Western Conference final or bust. Now, just because Adam Vingan says it doesn't necessarily make it true. I believe that once you get to the second round of the playoffs in the NHL, anything's possible. I've seen great teams demolished in the second round, and I've seen some teams, get hot at the right time and take advantage of it. And so to me, the second round of the playoffs is kind of the expectation. First round, you should be able to get by because you should have a good enough season that you don't play somebody great in the first round of the playoffs. So second round of the playoffs is what I circle. But I think we all believe they've got a team capable of that with the older players they have. Stamkos, Marchessault, O'Reilly, Forsberg, Yossi, that group. And while I could use an improvement at the second line center position, they're going to give Tommy Novak a try and see what happens. But because of the way that the Predators have built their team and the cap going up in the NHL and the fact that Saros is signed for only $7.74 million, which is under 8, and that they may be getting the $4 million back as far as Ryan Johansson is concerned off of his contract, I really look at the position they're in and I feel really good about where the team is. This is how I felt after the trade deadline when they acquired Jason Zucker and they acquired Anthony Beauvillier, but they didn't give up any good picks in order to do it. And I looked at it and I'm like, they have a ton of cap space. They have a good team now. Remember, this was when they were on that heater. I said, they have a good team now. They have tons of cap space to be able to go and work in free agency, which we know they did. And at the time, they had 2 first-round draft picks. They had, I think, 3 second-round draft picks, 2 second-round draft picks the next year. Like, it was totally loaded. And Barry is going out and getting things he wants. He feels like he doesn't have enough center prospects, so he goes and he makes the deal for this center prospect. He felt like he didn't have defense prospects, so he trades a second-round pick to Detroit, and he gets Andrew Gibson, I believe that was his name, Gibson, in return because he likes him as a defensive prospect. So now when I think of their low minors, as in guys that we probably won't see in the NHL anytime soon, the younger guys, the 20 and below group. So not the Svechkovs and the LaRues and those guys, because those guys will be here next year. Stasny, etc. They have a forward in Matthew Wood, a defenseman in Tanner Molendyk, another defenseman in Gibson. They drafted, I believe, what was the kid's name that they drafted from Russia in the first round this year?
Oh,
Igor
Surin?
Something like that.
Something like that.
Igor Surin, him. They've got Kimmel, and now they've got this Edstrom kid. That's everybody all across the board except for goalie, but goalie's the position that's spoken for the next 9 years. I actually like the position they're in. And then not only that, and I use the Tommy Novak situation as an example. If I was a betting man, I would say no, that Tommy Novak is not going to be good enough to center that second line against the best teams in the league with Stamkos and Marchessault come playoff time. Hope I'm wrong, but I just think that's reality. Well, the Predators at the deadline, especially if they get this $4 million back from Johansson. I mean, look, I like Johansson, even though I don't think Johansson likes me very much, but I like Johansson. So I hope that if Philly's just trying to screw him, I hope he gets his money. But Ian, they could use that extra $4 million, man.
Probably so. Yep.
So let's just say they get that $4 million back on Johansson. So they get to the deadline and they've got about $7 million in cap space and they've got 3 first-round draft picks. That puts you at the head of the line for any pending UFA type guy that if every team is just mouth-watering over a rental, you've got more ammo in order to get that guy than everybody else. You don't need somebody to retain salary. You don't need to, everybody else is going to try to give up second round. You got a first round pick. If you think this is a cup team, that's a totally different discussion. And the reason that the Predators, I think, really have struggled, and I know last year was a good year, but why I think they've kind of struggled with their prospects in large part is because they traded a first round pick for Ryan Hartman. They traded picks, in order to get Brian Boyle and other guys. And again, sometimes these things are trade chips to get you what you want around the deadline. Other times, they're your future. And they've got 3, let's say that they don't make a trade. They've got 3 cracks at it in the first round. Well, the Titans had 3 cracks at the second round in 2016. You know the first guy they drafted? Kevin Dodd. You know the second guy they drafted? Austin Johnson. Ian, do you know the third guy they drafted?
Not off the top of my head.
Derrick Henry. So they had 3 cracks at it. They drafted Kevin Dodd, Austin Johnson, and Derrick Henry. So that's why having more bites at the apple is always a good thing. And the one thing I've noticed about the way Barry Trotz has built this team is every time he gives himself options. So I just feel pretty good about it. And then the other thing, and I am going to ask Trotz about this when he comes on the show, I do wonder how much they had soured on Askarov. And where I really started to notice it, Ian, when I think about the souring on Askarov?
What's that?
When Chris Mason went on the midday show after he got benched in the AHL playoffs.
Okay.
Chris Mason got mad at me, and he went on the midday show, and he was talking about the maturity and all that kind of stuff. And you know as well as I do that Chris Mason, inside of that organization, when it comes to goalie, he's not just speculating. He's got. So that I wonder if they soured on Askarov. All right, your phones, 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We'll talk to Barry at 4 o'clock. We'll react to that. Then we'll get back to the football, and we'll have Chad, and we'll do our 53-man ride, all that kind of stuff. We'll do it on 615-737-1025 on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Let's talk Fireball whiskey. Goes down so smooth, and it tastes so great. There's no better way to ignite the night than to do so with ice-cold Fireball cinnamon whiskey. I love Fireball whiskey. Why? Because Fireball whiskey is delicious. It's the drink that says, time to celebrate. In fact, I may be doing a little celebrating tonight, and I might have to do so with Fireball whiskey. Ignite the night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy. That's Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. Corey, your reaction to the Yaroslav Askarov drama of the week and the trade that just went down.
Well, I'm surprised he didn't ask to be traded sooner, because I would have. I mean, I would have asked to have been traded, as soon as they signed Wedgwood, because the message was clear: you're not a part of our future at this point. So they got a first-round pick, and I think that was the important thing to get. I think they lost probably some. I don't know. Barry probably disagree with this. You probably lost a little bit of your weight in the deal because he demands a trade. You've shown he's not going to be playing for you, and so you need to get something for him. And so they got something for him, and I think that's probably best for everyone at this point.
That was Corey Curtis earlier this hour reacting to the trade that Yaroslav Askarov has been sent to San Jose for David Edstrom and a first-round pick. Everything else is all just window dressing. Fair to say, Ian?
Probably so, yeah.
Nolan Burke, the goalie they sent you, the third round, it's all window dressing. That's the gist of it. A first and a center prospect who, once again, was Vegas's top prospect at the time of the Thomas Hertl deal. And I am of the understanding that he is your top center prospect now that you've made the trade. So I do have a hot take before I get to your phones. I know I promised phones, and Barry's coming up in 10 minutes. The one thing the Predators had to do, I believe that the AHL playoffs, where Askarov got benched, and I went crazy about Carl Taylor because I'm like, why would you keep the top prospect out when you have to decide who's going to be your long-term answer? I think that was the moment with Trotz where he made the decision, and the decision was Saros. But right then and there, he can't trade Yaroslav Askarov. So he doesn't want to give anybody the impression that that's what he wants to do. Askarov had to be on the team on July 1st. Because if you look at the goalie contracts, now granted, goalie's kind of like running back. It feels like the numbers are going down. Hellebuck is what, 8.5 a year? That was kind of what everybody thought Saros was going to start at. And instead he's 7.74. Why? Because the Predators had another option and Saros knew it. So we're going to lower the AAV. We're going to keep the ability to go get some big names down the road. We're going to keep that open, but you can't do that if Askarov's not here. Once the deal was signed, it was all about, okay, when's the right time to make the trade? And I do wonder how much the complaining over the week had to do with this. But I think even if, and this is just me and maybe somebody who's a prospect guru would be right about this, or could tell me I'm right or wrong about this. I kind of feel like once you sign Saros to the deal, your leverage for an Askarov trade or for a Saros contract is based on the other. So once you sign the Saros contract and use Askarov as leverage to get a lower AAV because Saros doesn't want to leave, well, you've played that card. The other way around is if you don't sign Saros to an extension, then teams don't know that you're serious about dealing Askarov. They might make a better offer. So then you would have played that card and Saros can ask for $10 million. So you had to pick one or the other. I mean, I think a center prospect who's a tier 2 prospect, I think a tier 2 center prospect and a first round pick, that's probably the best you could do. So I don't have a problem with this trade. Somebody says in the YouTube chat, if that kid goes off to be a star in San Jose, you better give Barry Trotz the same criticism you give Rand Carthon. I will. But I don't know if you noticed the difference between the off seasons. The Titans spent all that money and Titans fans say, woo! And Vegas said, yeah, we still think you stink. The Predators spent all that money and Vegas, woo! Vegas says, yeah, they're now from 20-1 to win the cup to what is it now? Like 10-1, something like that? 7-1, 5-1. I mean, they said, hey, this is some serious damage what the Predators have done. But I am an equal opportunity criticizer, and you know that because I criticize David Poile. So if you think I'm going to criticize football more than hockey, you're crazy. I criticize him the same. And I criticize John Robinson, and I criticize everybody. I mean, that's just when these guys get jobs, I tell them, hey, if I don't like something, I'm going to say it. Same guy also said that if Saros isn't good, this could be the equivalent of the A.J. Brown trade. Ian, is it wrong to go out on a limb and say, I'm pretty sure this isn't going to be the equivalent of the A.J. Brown trade?
Yeah, not quite. It'd be one thing if they got like a pick and then immediately drafted their next goalie. Not quite apples to apples. Saros is more established. He's at least he's solid, and you're not just getting rid of your goalie. And the Titans case with A.J. Brown, they got rid of their best receiver. So
I think the other way around would be if they got rid of Saros and then decided to make Askarov the guy, and then Askarov went off the reservation.
Yeah, it fell on his face. Like
Saros won somewhere where they had a number one center.
Mhm.
That's what I think the problem is. Justin says, I'm really glad Trotz did this. It gives us some substantial news to talk about other than speculating on how bad the Titans' offensive line is going to suck. We still have plenty of time for that. One texter says, can you ask Trotz? Troy says, can you ask Trotz if he hated Askarov's antics? Bench pressing the goal crease, tackling an opponent, etc. I think there's a big difference with how Barry Trotz felt about the checking somebody in the middle of a game than, say, like the bench pressing the goal crease. I don't think he cared about that. I also think something went down during the AHL playoffs. And Barry Trotz is the kind of guy who, if he can't trust you, he's not going to put his eggs in your basket. And you can tell that with these contracts. I thought Tommy Novak's contract was a great example of that. A 3-year deal at $3.5 million. And there was talk, I think Elliott was talking about, Novak might be in the 5 range or the 4 range. Or what was it? Elliott said it would start with a 4. And I was like, no. And at 3 years, it's the kind of contract that if you want to get out of it, you can get out of it. If the guy stinks, he stinks, but it's not going to kill you. It's not Johansson's contract. It's not Duchesne's contract. If he can't trust you, he's not putting his eggs in your basket. And so that I actually kind of like. But as far as the bench pressing the goal, I don't think that was the problem. Okay, Barry Trotz joins us next on the program. We will ask him about the trade. We will ask him about the new centerman that they acquired. And again, I don't know if he's going to be here, when he's going to get here, whatever. We'll do that coming up. Hey, tune into 102.5 The Game this Sunday for coverage of the Coke Zero Sugar 400. Coverage will begin at 5:30 with the race starting at 6:30. Coverage also available on the 102.5 The Game app. And this week's Nashville's Best Deal is Bavarian Beer House, Nashville's only authentic German beer hall, a place full of fun, food, music, and most importantly, beer. Enjoy traditional German bratwurst schnitzel, giant pretzels, and more in an October-inspired space. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals now to get a $50 gift card for only $25 to Bavarian Beer House while supplies last. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Ian just told you in the update, the trade of the day. The Nashville Predators have dealt goalie Yaroslav Askarov and a third-round pick, which was acquired in the Yakov Trenin deal from Colorado, and Nolan Burke, which, again, I don't want to put anybody down, but I would say that that was a throw-in as part of the deal, have sent that to San Jose in exchange for David Edstrom, Vegas's first-round draft pick, and Magnus Krona, a third-round draft choice, or excuse me, a 30 or 23-year-old goalie, whatever. That's just thrown that in there. So that's the deal. And it is my understanding that David Edstrom, who is a former first-round pick, who, according to Scott Wheeler in The Athletic, was Vegas's number one prospect and would have been probably San Jose's fifth or sixth prospect, that Edstrom projects to be a solid third-line center who can potentially contribute on both special teams and is kind of a two-way player. And so because of that, that is going from an area of what I would say is probably weakness. You know, the center position, we've talked about that for a long time, about this organization finding centers, and it's still probably a weakness. It's not like they acquired Macklin Celebrini or Connor Bedard by making this deal. But what it really does is it gives them 3 first-round draft picks in this year's draft. And that is a big deal because it allows them to do whatever they want. So at the trade deadline, if they want to go out and get somebody, they've got the ammunition. If they want to wait until the draft to try to move up, they have, with the 3 first-round draft choices, they have the ammunition. And if they want to take 3 cracks at it and go off and draft 3 players, 3 18-year-olds, with the hope that somebody becomes Sebastian Aho or Jason Robertson or, you know, one of these big boy forwards that are not found 3rd overall, they have that. Now, the condition on the draft pick for the Predators is if Vegas stinks, which I don't think any of us think Vegas is going to stink, but stranger things have happened. If Vegas stinks and that's a top 10 pick, then San Jose has the option of transferring their pick to the Predators. So instead of it being a top 10 Vegas pick, so it's probably going to be a lower first-round draft pick than a higher one. But again, you have 3 first-round draft choices. And then the other thing we got to remember is around the deadline, this Johansson grievance, while it's not a grievance with you, it does affect you. Because if Johansson ends up not winning his grievance and his contract gets terminated, you get an extra $4 million. And at the trade deadline, that could be something you could use with 3 first-round draft choices in pocket. Barry Trotz is the man who made the deal, the general manager of the Predators, and he joins us now on the program. Barry, not often do you and I talk in August. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's been a while.
I know. Let's start with the trade. Get right to it. Let's talk about the return. We know, even though this team had signed UC Saros to a long contract extension, that there was a lot of value that you guys had placed on Yaroslav Askarov. Do you feel like in Edstrom and the first-round pick that you got fair value given the position you were in and Askarov's trade request?
Yeah, I think so. You know, Jared, and I think most people are in business when you have a good asset and they want to be moved and they come out a little bit publicly, you really are in a weaker position than normal. And I think we set out we explored all options. We had some targets of getting a really good prospect, especially at the center position, and a high pick. And then obviously with Askarov sort of so late in the game, we were looking for a good goaltending prospect with a good profile. And I think we were able to accomplish that with San Jose today.
When it comes to Edstrom, does he slide in as your top center prospect, or where do you view him kind of with the group of prospects that you guys have?
I think, especially at the center position, I obviously I'd like to get him here. He's a year younger, but I would put him and Svechkov are both really good prospects. They're going to play in the National Hockey League. They got some size, they got some skill. I feel really strongly that they're both going to be players that are going to play big minutes for us and important minutes for us in the future. So, I think we're building a center ice that has some, I'll say some depth to it. And, it started obviously with this trade today, getting, Edstrom. I had an opportunity to see him last year at the Four Nations in Detroit last year. And he was really impressive. And he'll be one of the leaders for the junior team in Sweden this year. So we feel real strongly that we improved our center ice, but we had to do it with giving up a really good prospect in Askarov. But two things I think the other thing that we accomplished, I really felt that, with Askarov coming to camp, and if we didn't have a decision or we hadn't had a move, no matter if we had a good camp or bad camp, I just thought it was going to take a little bit of a distraction to our focus of trying to do really well this year. And I think we got fair trade value for Askarov today, being in the position that we were.
Barry Trotz is with us. How much did Askarov's antics maybe play a role? We all saw the video of him in the playoffs checking the guy coming out of the crease. We obviously took note of the fact that he was benched in the AHL playoffs this past year and then coming out and requesting a trade. Again, I didn't talk to you directly about that, but I did see your statement, and I could tell you weren't very happy in that statement. How much of that kind of maybe forced your hand or made you decide to go in a different direction?
I think all those little things did a little bit, just because of when it got to be very public. I think it sort of pushed it over the end a little bit. So, and all the things that you had mentioned, those are things that are brought up when you're negotiating. This is why another team will have questions about them. So I wish it would have been a little more quiet. Sometimes you don't know who's driving the bus in his camp, if it's the player or representative. But I will say, as we got to the short strokes, their camp was very, very good with not only us in San Jose. So I give them credit. I would probably love to have done business a little bit different, but I think we did a really good job, both sides, their side and our side, of coming to an agreement where both sides are probably happy today.
Barry Trotz is with us on the program. When did you make the choice? Because, you and I talked before you signed Saros to a deal, and I asked you, I know that you could sign Saros and still have Askarov on the team, but 4 years down the road, can you have both guys? You have to choose one or the other. And you said at some point you got to pick one or the other. When did you make the choice that you were going to go forward with Saros, make sure to get a deal done with Saros, and subsequently allow you to make Askarov tradable?
Well, I think when we got Saros signed and then what we did in free agency, obviously two things. I think that you saw where we were last year. At the end of the year, we saw we had a really good culture. We had a good team. We needed to improve our scoring. We have a superstar defenseman. Saros being signed is one of the top goalies in the league. And you got Philip Forsberg, and you got Ryan O'Reilly, and you look at your team, you got a bunch of young kids coming. I felt that we were in a little bit of window to take advantage of Forsberg, an O'Reilly, a Nyquist, the group of guys that we have, and then with the group, if we could just add some more scoring for our special teams, our 5-on-5 play. You look at the playoffs last year. We didn't lose the series 5-on-5. We lost the series in the special situations. one game on the Vancouver's power play, another game on 6-on-5 late in the game where they scored 2 goals, and then we ended up losing in overtime. So yeah, I was looking for a little more of those skill positions, cultural as well, and serial winners, which they are, and felt that we still had a little bit of a window that we should take advantage of these top players, not only for their skill level, but a really good look for us and grow with our guys. And next year it'll be 2 more guys or 3 more guys. And then, you get into the third year and you're half your team. And I was looking back and, we only had like 7 guys from 3 years ago that are still in this, on our team. So there's been a lot of change. And with getting Cyril signed, I really felt strongly that would have been a situation with Askarov could have taken advantage of. But we had to protect ourselves by signing Wedgwood because I didn't know how it was going to play out. If Askarov was fine and he could have been the backup, or he could have said, you know what, I don't see a path still. If you got Cyril signed, in demand a trade, then we'd be looking for a goalie. So I tried to be as clear as I could that, the path is there to be in the National Hockey League. The path is there, maybe long term, if he got to that point because of Saros's protection. And then the third thing is that we can grow together for a while, and then you could move on when you're more ready. So we put all those on there, but they thought it over. They, and then they obviously demanded a trade. So we just tried to react the right way to protect our team. There's no player that's bigger than the Nashville Predators, and we sort of cover all our bases. So I felt real strongly that no matter what decision any camp made, we were able to react to it. And fortunately for us, we got, I thought, really good value for Askarov. And he's a good player, and I wish him the best, no question. But he's now a San Jose Shark, and I know that we got David Edstrom. We're going to get a really good pick from in our first with Vegas or the San Jose, depending on how it falls. And then we've got a good goaltending prospect. So next year it should be exciting. We've got 3 first-round picks. We should get some players. We have 2 second-round picks next year. We've got 5 picks in the first 68 players of the draft, and 3 of them are going to be in the first 32, guaranteed. So I think I put the pressure on the scouts to find these guys. We're going to continue to keep adding to our pool of players, and continue to try to thread the needle of transitioning a lot of young players with some really good old players and get a great blend and hopefully be a contender for a long, long time.
When it comes to the 3 first-round draft choices, Barry Trotz is with us. How much do you view that as I'm getting 3 shots? Because you've always talked about taking big swings, which means taking risks. But that could be 3 risk opportunities that you take. But also, how much do you think about potentially at the trade deadline? We talked last year about the league shifting from first rounders for rentals to more second rounders for rentals and first rounders for foundational players. How much do you look at those 3 ones and think that at the deadline, that could be something to bolster the group that you have now with Marchessault and Stamkos and Forsberg and Yossi and Shea and Saros?
Absolutely. I mean, to me, it sets us up both ways. I think obviously in the first round, you can get some game changers. I don't think, unless there's a game changer that we could go and sign and have long-term, the first round, in my first thought would be for picks. Going from there, the second rounders could be for acquisition, and we've got obviously 2 seconds, and we've got all our picks in the next couple of years. So I think I have a lot of equity, if you will, and plus we've got some good prospects that can be used as assets if needed to push us over the edge if we needed it at the appropriate time.
Barry, how close of an eye are you keeping on this Ryan Johansson situation? I mean, I know that when you guys traded Johansson, you knew that you were taking on the $4 million in retained salary, and I know you wished him the best, but if he ends up, if he loses this grievance, you get $4 million back on the cap. And I believe you would get a retained slot back as well. So how much of an eye are you keeping on that? And are you managing right now like you're still responsible for Johansson's $4 million, or are you treating it like you're going to be let off the hook on that?
No, I have to treat it. I will tell you exactly how I have to treat it. I have to treat it as if it's an escrow until the grievance is. If they go to a grievance, which it sounds like they potentially will, I have to take and just act like it's not there until the final grievance is made. And if we get a bump from that, or some salary cap space because of that, a retention spot from that, that will just be a bonus. So I've got to act as if it's not there until there's a final decision, and it's sort of in an escrow account until the final decision is made.
Barry, is there a fear for you when making a trade like this that Yaroslav Askarov could become a superstar, and how the reaction would be if that's what ends up happening?
No, you can't. You have to trust that the player that he is. He's going to be a good player in this league, and we feel that Edstrom's going to be a good player. I mean, everybody probably, Askarov's got some cachet at this point in his career. Edstrom's a year younger, maybe 2 years younger. What happens if Edstrom becomes the star and Askarov doesn't? So it works both ways. I don't think you can ever make a trade in fear. If you're gonna do that in fear, I would say that you're in the wrong business. So it just is, because there's no guarantee that, and I've been in this business a long time, there's no guarantee that a 22-year-old or 21-year-old or 19-year-old, you can automatically say that this guy's going to be a absolute superstar. Those are very, very rare. The Crosbys and the McDavids and those guys are almost sure things. They're the gold standard. And then there's a next level, and I can give you a lot of success stories, and I can give you a lot of failures. So you can't make any trade in fear. You've done your research, you've done your all the stuff, you get the best value, and then you go from there. I mean, the pick that we have from next year, if we pick someone and he turns into a superstar, is that's still part of the trade? So there's lots of ways to look at it. Everybody we'll find out when their careers are over if it was a good trade, bad trade, or indifferent. So there's a long road before we find out the answer to that.
Barry, where does the goalie you acquired, Krona, where does he fit in? Because it seems pretty set in stone that it's going to be Saros 1 and Wedgwood 2 for the next couple of years. What are your thoughts on him and where he fits in?
Well, I think Krona will start. I would say he's probably number three, or 3A or 3B. We've got Matt Murray down there as well. But the one thing that and I trust a lot in Mitch Korn and Ben Vanderklok, I think with those two, they looked at the profile. Here's a big man. He's got great size. He moves really well. He's been in a little bit of a tough situation with San Jose's farm team wasn't really strong, and their big team wasn't very strong, and so he got left out to some hard games where he got lit up a little bit, but at times he was the reason that they were in games all the time. So our profile on him is he's a big man who moves really well. He processes fairly well. So we are hoping that we can get him to the next level, which I I do believe he can. And I've watched Mitch Korn and Ben Vanderklok work some great magic with goalies from other organizations, and they've become really top goaltenders. So we're excited about Magnus. The growing pains are, I think he's gone through college, and he's had been a little bit in the American League. Now it's just time to grow and find that level. It's just like Askey. I mean, it was a big push for Askey. Obviously he wants to play in the National Hockey League. This is some things that people don't realize. Askarof's a 22-year-old hockey player. There is not one backup in the National Hockey League that is younger than 23 in the National Hockey League. Most of the backups in the league are 24, 25, 26. Most of the starters in the National Hockey League are in their late 20s to, I would say, 30s and above. And so that was a big ask, for Askey if he wants to be a number one at 22 years old. There hasn't been one of those for quite a while. So we'll see. I think there's a lot of growth with Askey. There's a lot of growth with Magnus. Magnus, I think, is a year older than Askey. So, they usually mature and become good goaltenders as they get older. You look at the Allmarks and the Swaymans and then those guys around the league that come through college and then to the next level for a few years and then backed up, and then they finally sort of break through. So. The top goaltenders, you look at them, they're all in their late 20s to early 30s. So
last one,
growth with it.
Last one for you, Barry. Sorry about that, but last one for you. Is it disappointing when you have talked as much about culture and teamwork and everything that you have really brought up since you've been here? Is it disappointing when you lay out a plan for a young goalie like Askarov with the Mitch Korns that you bring in and Ben Vanderklok and Pekka Rinne, and you have a guy on staff in Pekka who has said to me that he did not want to go back to Milwaukee in year 3, and it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to him. And still the 22-year-old goalie didn't want to be a part of that development plan. How disappointing is that for you guys when trying to build the culture the way you want it?
I would say it's disappointing, but it's also the reality. You look around what's happened even in the last week or so. You saw that, Pittsburgh got McGuarty from Winnipeg. McGuarty said he's ready for the National Hockey League. Askarov said he's ready for the National Hockey League. And I had this conversation with Askey when we first had a conversation that sort of led to this path. And he said, he felt that he was ready for the National Hockey League. And I said, I'm glad that you're so confident, but your play will tell you if you're ready for the National Hockey League, not you saying you're ready for the National Hockey League. And that's probably a little disconnect. That's probably, you're seeing more and more of those, I think it was Cutter Gauthiers and young players saying, hey, I'm ready. Well, everybody wants to play in the National Hockey League, and every player that's in Milwaukee probably feels that they're ready for the National Hockey League until you're here. And Mitch Korn, who is, as I say, I think is the best in the business, he always says to me, anybody can be a backup goalie until you have to play. And there's a lot of truth to that. It takes a special individual to play as a number one in the National Hockey League, and it takes a lot of growth, flow growth. It doesn't happen overnight, because being the number one goaltender in the National Hockey League is maybe the most difficult job in the National Hockey League to be consistent at. And, to say any young player, and it's not directed at anybody in particular, any young player who says, I'm ready to play in a National Hockey League, that's a statement. But your play and your production and your game will tell your coaches, your management, the fans, if you're ready to play in the National Hockey League.
He is the Predators general manager, Barry Trotz. As always, Barry, we appreciate it. Looking forward to training camp right around the corner.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to having you on a regular basis.
There you go. We like hearing that. Barry Trotz, as always. Barry, take care. We'll see you very, very soon. Barry Trotz joining us on the program. I say as he always does during the season, but I'll also say this for Barry. He joins us whenever there's big news. So basically right there, I mean, he told you. There's one thing that Barry said. Well, one thing that was consistent about what Barry said that I think should probably tell us going forward, what the mindset of the team is. I'll get to that coming up next. And your reaction, your thoughts, 615-737-1025. It's a Fireball Hot Take Friday. It's Stillman & Company on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Barry Trotz just joined us on the program. Again, the breaking news, Yaroslav Askarov to San Jose. David Edstrom, who I asked Barry Trotz, says he going to be the top center prospect. He said he's right there, although a year younger than Fedor Svechkov, but right there, those two are your top center prospects. And a first-round pick, 3 first-rounders. And Barry, I think he made it very clear when I asked him about, are you going to use those 3 first-round picks? Are you interested in using those 3 first-round picks in order to maybe make a move at the deadline? And he said, only if it's a foundational player that they can sign to an extension would he use a first-round pick. An acquisition at the deadline might be one of the 2 second-round picks. One thing that Barry Trotz said that I think really stood out to me is he said when it came to Askarov, he told Trotz he was ready for the NHL. And Trotz said, I told him, you don't decide when you're ready. Your play decides when you're ready. The GM doesn't decide. The fans don't decide. They don't decide. And I read something very similar to that coming out of his mouth in the Tennessean at the draft. And what it tells me is what Barry tells us when he says something like that, he's saying the exact same thing to the player. There's a lot of transparency when it comes to Trotz. And I think he's using the media as kind of a reinforcement, as opposed to, I'm just going to go out there and lie because it makes me feel better. I think it's more of I just sat down with this guy and I told him the truth to his face, and now I'm going to go tell everybody the same thing so he knows there's not a mixed message. And I think that's the coach in him. All right, 615-737-1025. We're to your phones next. Had to take a little short segment there because obviously we went long with Barry. 615-737-1025, but I will make it up to you. I will give something away later this hour here on Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
Next year, it should be exciting. We've got 3 first-round picks. We should get some players. We have 2 second-round picks next year. We've got 5 picks in the first 68 players of the draft. And 3 of them are going to be in the first 32, guaranteed. So I think, I put the pressure on the scouts to find these guys. We're going to continue to keep adding to our pool of players. And continue to, try to thread the needle of transitioning a lot of young players with some really good old players and get a great blend and hopefully be a contender for a long, long time.
That was Barry Trotz just now on our program. And again, the Yaroslav Askarov trade is done. Askarov to San Jose. The Predators get a top center prospect and a first-round pick. So I got to tell you, I like it. And somebody texted me during the break, and they said, imagine how giddy you would be if the Titans had 3 first-round draft picks in the upcoming draft and 2 second-round picks. Ian, could you imagine if the Titans had 3 first-round draft picks and 2 second-round picks?
That would be pretty something.
Now, it sucks because in hockey, we don't know these guys.
And it takes a few years, yeah.
Yeah, like they draft some 17-year-old out of Nova Scotia, Halifax, From the Moose heads, it's like, oh, what do I know about him? Unless you're picking Connor Bedard, which this team will never be able to pick a Connor Bedard. But between the free agent moves they've made and the draft picks they've got, and again, I'm not rooting for Ryan Johansson to not get his money if he's owed his money. But let me say this. Ryan Johansson earned a lot of free money from the Predators. Now, he didn't necessarily pay what he owed. So if they get that $4 million back and they get that retention slot back, that could be a big deal come trade deadline season, especially if Novak doesn't work as a second line center. 615-737-1025. Ian, do you have a thought or do you want to go to the phones?
Let's go to the phones.
Phones. Shelby in Murfreesboro says, listening to Barry Trotz reminds me of why I love and respect my hockey team more than the football team across the river. Regardless of the outcome, he shows up to answer the tough questions and no nonsense. In Trotz, we trust. Well, I don't think that just because Barry Trotz comes on the show, it says anything bad about the Titans. Now, I do kind of feel when it comes, and I really try to do this. I try to ask the same questions I would ask of another team that's not our flagship partner. And I think Barry understands that. I hope he respects it. And I try to kind of kick the biases out because, of course, I'm rooting for the Predators, and I really respect the job Barry's done, but I try to kick the biases to the side. One texter says, I hope Askarov does well, but he should have been the future in Nashville. So if I had to disagree with Trotz, where I would disagree was with the decision to extend Saros. Once the decision to extend Saros was done, well, the decision had been made. And at that point, it's time to move on. It's kind of like talking about Roma Dunze or Brock Bowers. Once you draft J.C. Latham, it's time to move on. And so that's how I kind of feel about the Askarov, Saros, I never believed that they could have this long-term development program where, Askarov goes down to the minors and Wedgwood's here, and then he comes up a couple of times, and then he goes back to the minors, and then he comes up, and then he goes back, and then next year he's the backup, and then, Saros starts to play half the games, and Askarov plays half the games in 5 years. I didn't buy that. Once you sign Saros to an 8-year deal, he's the goalie. So that would be my only complaint, is that Saros does not win in the playoffs. For whatever reason, he doesn't win in the playoffs. And now we all have to hope and pray with better players around him. I think we can all agree that Stamkos and Brady Shea and Forsberg and that group is probably better than Johansson, Duchesne, and Ellis and all those guys. But with better players around him, we all have to hope and pray that I'm wrong and they're right. And that Saros can win in the playoffs. We have to hope. Justin says, if Barry is happy, I'm happy. This man has proven he knows what he's doing so far as the GM, so I am trusting his knowledge and experience. All respect to the Titans, but I am more pumped about the Predator season than I am for football at this point. Let me say this. When push comes to shove with what we've seen so far, like, Ian, is it fair to say that we've seen enough out of Barry Trotz to say, like, he can do this job? He's a good general manager.
Well, I mean, it's only been 1 year, and he's made some, bold moves, and the team is was more competitive last year than I think most people anticipated. So I think he's off to a good start. It seems like he has at least like a concrete vision in his head, about what he wants. And he's not afraid to do what he has to do to make that happen. So I'll give him that for sure.
And I feel like he never pins himself in a corner. Now, maybe the Saros deal will be it, because that is a very heavy contract. And now that Askarov's out, there's really no escaping it. He's the goalie. But that might, if Saros starts to stink, which we've never seen him stink. We just haven't seen him win in the playoffs. again, I don't know, the draft classes, if, Mullendijk and Wood and Stiga, and I don't know if these guys are any good or not, but that'll be something that tells us this. Here's the other thing, too, that the Predators are still in position for, I think. I believe they can still add a big contract. Not this year, but next year. I believe they can do that. And if they really want to add a big contract, they probably can, because they could probably move Colton Sissons, or they could move somebody who makes a little bit of money, not a lot, but they could move that kind of player. Tommy Novak at $3.5 million. And I have said the hunt for the big boy forward is going to end when somebody who's really worth it, and I'm not talking about Matt Duchene, not one of these guys that we talk ourselves into, this guy's really worth it, but I'm talking about somebody who is really, really worth it. Like Matthew Tkachuk a couple years ago. When that guy decides they want to trade, let's say a big boy forward in the NHL right now goes to the team and says, I want a contract extension, and the team says, no, we're not going to do it, or he says, I'm not going to sign. Draisaitl. Let's use him as an example here. Now, maybe you don't have the assets for Draisaitl, but you see where I'm going with this, right? If this guy wants out, you play in a state that does not have an income tax. I just spent a week in Canada. Let me tell you something. It's expensive up there. So you play in a state that does not have an income tax. Your state has nice weather in the winter. Your team has Steven Stamkos and Roman Josi and Jonathan Marchessault and Ryan O'Reilly and Philip Forsberg. People like that. You've got an offensive coach, and you should have money, and the team that you would be dealing with, you have picks. You have prospects, whether it's Mullendijk or Kimmel or whatever. Edstrom. Hell, you acquired the package that Vegas used to get Thomas Hertl. You acquired that package with Askarov. So you have that. To me, that's how you get that big boy forward when that guy comes available. So I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad about the position they're in at all. One texter says, not sure how this works, but did the Sharks trade for Askarov to have him be the for sure backup or a starter? Or does he get there and still not end up playing in the NHL? I have no idea. That is their business. Not mine. For whatever that's worth. I don't have an issue with that. One texter says, the casual fans complaining about this trade just blow my mind. We, talking about the Predators, just stocked up. Ian, are people complaining about the trade?
The Askarov trade?
Yeah.
I don't know about complaining, but I do think there are some people who are, wondering if the Preds did best with their asset management here. And as far as, the future, the ceiling of Askarov versus the ceiling of Saros, the younger player, and what Askarov could become.
Interesting.
I do think there's some people who worry about that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, once you sign Saros, to me, that ship had sailed. You want to be upset about it? Be upset about it in July, because that's when it was time to be upset. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. There was one little Titans nugget I want to get in there, and then we go back to your phones coming up next on the program. First, I want to tell you about the FanDuel Sportsbook app. I love the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's my official sportsbook app, and it is America's #1 sportsbook. Well, they've got something a little different for you, because right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/JGM And again, that's for America's #1 sportsbook. 21 and over in Pleasant, Tennessee. Full price of NFL Sunday ticket will be automatically charged seasonally after free trial. No refunds, terms, restrictions, and embargoes apply. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. We have a little bit of breaking news here on the Predators front, and this one doesn't have to do with the players, as the Predators have made the Yaroslav Askarov trade, but apparently Bally Sports will have the Predators games this upcoming season. It is official. I am reading, Diamond Sports Group has reached an agreement with the NHL and the NBA. The Miami Herald, I guess, is the one that is first responsible for this. As I am reading from barrettmedia.com that has the info, they've reached an agreement with the NHL and the NBA, according to court documents filed on Friday, as the Sinclair subsidiary seeks to finalize a go-forward plan that will operate its business. These agreements will last through the 2024-2025 season, dependent upon the status of the ongoing Chapter 11 bankruptcy, whatever that means. Before the company was able to compile a restructuring support agreement, it had planned to cease operations following this year's baseball season. They had reached a deal with the NBA that involved a reduction in rights payments in exchange for reverting the rights back to teams upon the end of the season. The Sinclair subsidiary came to a similar agreement with the NHL, but things shortly changed after Amazon reached a deal with the regional sports network operator. Okay. It says, Within the NHL term sheet, there are modifications to the NHL agreements, some of which involve rights fees, expiration dates, and direct-to-consumer rights available to such debtors. The continuation and or extension of these modified NHL agreements, including the within the NBA agreements as well, is premised on if the debtors confirm a going concern Chapter 11 bankruptcy plan and comply with the terms and conditions therein. The hell does that mean? Trying to see if they actually convert any of this to English. Diamond will assume the agreements and make all payments and keep broadcasting games under its purview through the conclusion of the NHL season. This includes Carolina, Tampa, Minnesota, Columbus, Anaheim, Detroit, and Nashville. During the offseason, the Stars and Florida Panthers parted ways. Darn. For whatever that's worth. The term sheet also provides protections to the NHL parties to ensure that Diamond and its debtors will perform the obligations as agreed on. What I want to know is, what does this mean for streaming? My guess is it's probably the same. But what I am fascinated by is Amazon paying $115 million to get involved in on this. Does this mean that the games will be available on Amazon? One texter texts into the text line, we shall see. One texter into the text line says, could Jeff Fisher become the Titans GM one day and do what Barry has done? By the way, Jeff Fisher was the Titans GM at one point, essentially, and we saw how that went. It should also be noted, I just want to get this off my chest. Can I get something off my chest, Ian?
Sure.
I just want to get this off my chest. Jeff Fisher is a freaking liar. Did you see that Air McNair documentary?
I did not know.
So Jeff Fisher's sitting in this chair talking about all the work he did on Steve McNair. And I went down to Alcorn State and we watched Steve McNair and we did, we this, we that. Ian, you know as well as I do, Jeff Fisher had very little to do with the drafting of Steve McNair. In fact, one time, I had nothing to do with this, but a Rams blog picked up on Floyd when I was dogging Jeff Fisher, and Floyd said, I go, Floyd, your thoughts, ha, ha, ha. And he said, no comment.
No thoughts.
No thoughts. Yeah, no thoughts. And the headline was, former Titans GM Floyd Reese on Jeff Fisher, : no thoughts. And it talked about how Floyd was like, well, you know, Jeff just did the coaching. I did the evaluating. I did Steve. I did Eddie. I did Javon. I did the. And here's Jeff Fisher in this documentary sitting there talking about what he did. I talked to somebody who would know, who told me Jeff Fisher wasn't even in the draft room. Wasn't even in the room. But Floyd's dead. Bud Adams is dead. Everybody else involved was dead. So I was the one calling the shots. Oof. Could Jeff Fisher become the Titans GM one day? Let's keep Jeff Fisher with arena football and play these games in a shopping mall. Don't even get me started on it. This is the wrong week to get me started on Jeff Fisher after that Air McNair documentary about all the scouting Jeff Fisher. How about this too? He came up, so you know they had Chris Chandler as a quarterback, and he told the story that in the rookie year, McNair went to Jeff Fisher and said, I need to play. And so Fisher decided I was going to play him. First of all, McNair sat for 2 years. Secondly, there's no way Jeff Fisher is making that decision. Again, the guy who made that decision, he stabbed in the back and then tried to get in good with him at the end there. And you know, Floyd, he didn't want any part of it. Jeff Fisher. Talk about ungrateful. You know, and I really thought that, like, after Floyd had passed away, Jeff said some very nice things about Floyd, and they got inducted into the Hall of Fame together, which I thought they should have been. And I really thought, you know, Jeff was going to basically own up to what he did, and he didn't. And there he is in the documentary. Oh, I'm the one who did everything. Give me a break. Give me a break. Oh, I'm sorry for all the other texters. I got all worked up. Basically, the English of the Bally Sports is that they would consider the contract void if the Chapter 11 results in the company going out of business. I guess that would make sense. And apparently, Willie says they can't pull the plug in the season. So it is Bally Sports, period, the end. For whatever that's worth. Ian, I think that Jeff Fisher rant got my blood
Got you a little worked up.
boiling a little bit.
Yeah. It happens sometimes.
And again, maybe Fisher was in the war room. I don't know. But what I was told by somebody who would know. And Ian, I think you can agree that I probably have some pretty good sourcing on this.
Probably.
That he was not in there when they picked McNair. I mean, Coach Steckel called the show one time and talked about how there was a coach, he wouldn't mention who begged Floyd not to take Steve McNair. Unbelievable. 615-737-1025. Somebody says Jeff Fisher's first draft, he drafted Chris Johnson. That's not true. His first draft, he drafted Chris Henry, for whatever that's worth. Chad Withrow joins us next on the program. All right, we're on to the Titans. We got the game. We got our 53-man roster. We've been doing it every week. We've got the game on Sunday. We got Chad Withrow joining us next from Outkick, as he always does. First, let's talk about Fireball Whiskey. Fireball Whiskey goes down so smooth, and it tastes so great. There is no better way to ignite the night than to do so with ice-cold Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. You know I love Fireball Whiskey. That's right. It is the best. So enjoy this weekend. If you're out celebrating, if you're out and about, whatever it may be sure to do so with Fireball Whiskey. Ignite the night. Please do it responsibly. And please be 21 years or older. Enjoy. That's Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. Oh, I promised a giveaway, and Ian, thank you for that, because I said I'd do it this hour, and I don't want to be the guy who lies. So be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you'll win a pair of tickets to see OAR at the Ryman on Sunday, September 1st. Good luck with that. Chad's next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. It is 5 o'clock, which means it's time for Chad Withrow, presented by A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa. Chad, first of all, before we get into anything about the Titans, congratulations. We've made it because college football kicks off tomorrow afternoon.
11 a.m. Central Time, Jared. 11 a.m. Central Time is a high holy day and a high holy moment for all of us that have waited all offseason for some sort of meaningful football. So when Florida State and Georgia Tech kick off from Dublin, Ireland at that time, it's going to be a special time for all of us. Congratulations to you, too, as well, for making it through this long offseason. I, for one, cannot wait.
By the way, do you think that's a good enough game? Georgia Tech, Florida State?
No, of course not. But neither was Notre Dame Navy. Neither was Nebraska Northwestern. I'm trying to think of the other Ireland kickoff games.
The problem is you're not going to get somebody good. Like you're not going to get like Georgia to go over to Ireland.
I would love it, you know, and I get why it doesn't happen because, you know, people don't want to play that early week and all that. But if we could just get 2 games, it doesn't have to be, you know, LSU, USC in Vegas, or what that first week is now with a lot of good, you know, cross-conference matchups. Where before, the first week was nothing. No good games. Now there's a lot of them. I would love to get one more good game. I'd like to elevate Georgia Tech, Florida State, which, by the way, isn't terrible. I think it's like a 12-point line, and that line's actually gone down. I'd like to get one that's a little bit better than that and just get 2 of them. If we could get one at 11 a.m. or noon or whatever and one late afternoon or night, that is just like that game. That's all I ask for. I'm not being greedy. I would just love to get one more game that everyone can tune into and watch in that week 0. Because right now, you know, it's New Mexico and Hawaii and teams like that that are playing in the first week, other than that one somewhat big game. It's also weird that it's a conference game to start. I thought it was weird when it was Northwestern Nebraska in a Big Ten game in week 0 also. It should be a non-conference game and give me one more, and then I'll be even happier.
Let's get to the Titans. They wrap up the preseason at New Orleans on Sunday. Brian Callahan says the starters are going to play, and I think they need to because the offense has been dreadful in training camp as of late. Yesterday, they did not move the football in the 2-minute drill at all against the starting defense. They didn't move the football at all against the Seattle starting defense, other than that one running play at the beginning of practice would have been pretty good against the Seahawks. How nervous are you about the Titans offense, and how important is it for them to look competent on Sunday at New Orleans?
I think it's somewhat important for them to look like a team that's understanding Callahan's offense. Here, I think we undervalued all offseason, Jared. We knew the upgrades with talent on this roster, and we've seen it, and they have gotten better from a talent standpoint. And J.C. Latham hopefully is going to be the left tackle for the Titans for the next 10 years and be great. And all of those things. We know the issue at right tackle. I think what maybe, and I can't speak for everyone, what I undervalued is the adjustment to Brian Callahan's offense and the adjustment for Will Levis to a new offense and Brian Callahan's offense. So while bringing in a Tyler Boyd, who we know because of his time in Cincinnati, is a perfect fit for this offense, having the one player piece that comes in and have them in the offense doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to have a ton of success because everyone else has to adjust too. And then the other pieces you brought in have to fit perfectly and have to understand Brian Callahan's offense. And there's not as much time to get used to new offense or defense in the NFL. I don't think they put as much emphasis on, obviously they don't in preseason games, but even the amount of time they have practicing and all that, it's going to be a tough adjustment. I think that's what this offensive preseason has taught me about the Titans. They're not going to come out of the gate swinging. They're not going to come out like Ken Wisenhunt's offense did with Marcus Mariota against Tampa Bay in that opener against Jameis Winston that one year. I think this is going to be tough to watch, quite frankly, for the first part of the season until they really start to get in a groove offensively, which you hope happens at some point.
Do you think this fan base will flip on Levis if things don't start off well?
I think no. I think the power of positivity with this fan base is huge. And I think that because of that, they will not be quick to flip on anyone this season. I do think that people are overly optimistic about this Titans team and not being very realistic about them. So there will be some that say, "Oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to look like. Now I'm going to bail on expectations." But I think it's more of just a reality check than anything else. I don't think people are going to turn on them as much as they're going to turn back to being realist and understanding that this is year one for a new coach that's bringing in a completely different offense. This really is kind of Will Levis's first year also in some ways because it's his first year with the offense and his first year coming into the season as the starter. So I think people will be quick to go to be more realistic about this Titans team and not as overly optimistic.
TD said on the show, and I don't want to misquote him, but he said something, there's going to be an ESPN story that comes out with the value of the money the Titans spent in the offseason and what it means they should do in terms of winning and losing. And I believe TD said that the floor for this team should be 9 wins this season. Forget about the money and the numbers and the things like that. I mean, I think he's using kind of history and math to give him that 9-win number. I think 9 wins would be great for this team. I think the idea that, that 9 wins should be what they do, to me, might be a little strong given where I think they are right now.
Well, look, the league is set up for everyone to have 9 wins or 8 wins.
Right.
Right. So let's start there. If you're doing your job, you should have 8 or 9 wins. But there's also different parts of the process for different teams. There are teams coming into the season. I'll throw New England as one of them. They don't want to win 8 or 9 games this year, right? They want to win less than that because they want to have a high draft pick next year, and they know that they're starting a new process of building a team back up. So they don't want to be in the middle of the pack. So I don't. If for TD to say, the floor is what 8 wins or 9 wins, I mean, I think that's fair, but there's an obvious floor that's lower than that if they have bad injury issues like they've had in the past. That goes without saying for every team across the league. But it's the NFL. Like, it's really difficult. We had Jim Nagy on yesterday, the head of the Reese's Senior Bowl, and he talked about being really good friends with Reggie Cobb, the former Tennessee running back and NFL running back, and they were scouts together. And Reggie Cobb talked about a season with Rich Kotite in the New York Jets where they went 1-15. And Reggie Cobb told him, "You got to work real hard to go 1-15 in the NFL. That's really difficult to do." We were trying to go 1-15. We didn't want to win more games than that. So it's difficult to be really bad in the NFL. I think it's difficult to be really good. I think it's difficult to be really bad. So, putting an expectation around 500 is kind of the easy way out, but it's also probably the right way to do it.
Do you think that this Chad Withrow with us on the program, do you think that this Titans defense is going to be good enough? We've seen them, I guess, dominate in practice, but who knows if that's bad offense or good defense. Do you think there's a chance it's good enough when L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie get in there that they could carry the team for the first half of the season until the offense starts to click?
No, I don't. I think there's going to be an adjustment for the defense also. Now, here's one that I'll throw in that I think could change the course of things for the Titans. If Devondre Sweat is great, and I mean great, as a rookie, where he completely adds a different element to the defense in terms of pressure up the middle, run stuffing ability, all of those things, then I think, they could be good enough they're going to keep the Titans in the game. They could be good enough to win games with the defense if that's the case. But I think that's a big if to start his career that way. So I'm going to say no.
See, I worry that if that's not the case, then this team could be in trouble because this is the thing. I know it's just 2-minute drills, but they went the 2-minute against the Seattle Ones. Levis threw 1 pass and it got intercepted. They went 2-minute yesterday against the Ones, and Levis and company were terrible and did not move the ball. And then they went against the second team, and supposedly, according to Paul, I wasn't there, but Paul said they moved the football against the second team thanks to penalties, and they got a long field goal out of it. That's bad. But then I'm told, oh, no, it doesn't matter because it's practice, Jared. And I'm like, right, but that's all we have to go off of. And it makes me worry that when the offense goes up against an NFL defense, that they're not very good. And that is a huge concern for me if the defense can't be dominant to keep them in these games.
Yeah, and for those that say it's just practice, Jared, I mean, unless the Titans are holding back, 17 different trick plays they're going to run over the course of an NFL game, then what we're seeing in practice, especially with the joint work with the Seahawks, or what we're seeing in preseason games when the starters are in, I mean, that's a little bit of what we're going to see in the regular season, at least early on. I mean, I get that flip. There's a switch once the season starts. And I understand that once you get to the regular season, everyone's going to be a little bit different. But all we have to go on right now is practice. And I think there's plenty of reasons to be somewhat concerned about Will Levis. There's a lot of reasons to be concerned about the offense. And I think the defense, while it should be pretty good and improved from last year, and the pass rush should be better and all those things, they're really relying on some new additions and a rookie in Tavondre Sweat to be special early on if you think that defense is going to carry them.
Is there anything to make of the problems between Calvin Ridley and Will Levis, or is that going to work itself out by the time they play real football?
So separate of just that individual personality issue or whatever's going on there, like who's going to listen to Will Levis right now? Like who comes into a room and is like, yeah, this is our leader. This is the guy. I really want to get on the same page with him. I don't know who that is. I don't think they're outright disrespecting Will Levis or anything, but Calvin Ridley's a guy who had no problem saying he didn't run hard in a practice against the Seahawks at some point. So I say that not to crush Will Levis or belittle him or anything. Jared, I just don't know. I mean, it would be one thing if it was an established guy like even a Ryan Tannehill, who had been around a year, been around the locker room, and guys respected him even if he wasn't the most vocal dude. They knew how he went about his business, so people wanted to get on the same page with him. I don't know what the motivation is to get on the same page with Will Levis other than selfishly wanting to get the football. I don't really know Will Levis as a leader that much. I saw his Mayo commercial. That was funny. I haven't seen enough of him to know how he's going to lead. I know he's a fiery personality, so it's difficult to say exactly if I'm worried or not, if it says more about Calvin Ridley or about Will Levis, or if it's much ado about nothing.
Mm-hmm. Chad Withrow with us on the program. The Hot Seat is coming up next. Stillman and Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. It's 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Chad Withrow with us from A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa. Chad, do you want to get right to the hot seat, or do you have a thought?
Let's get right to the hot seat.
Okay, number one, how much do you value what starters do in the preseason?
I mean, I value whether or not they play. That tells me a lot about what the teams think about their team going into the season if they play more than others. So if you're playing in the preseason, it's because you need the work and you need to get something done and accomplished, and the coaching staff needs to see you play. So my answer to that is absolutely I value what they do in the preseason. Because why? Because the coaching staff values it because they're playing. If starters are playing more in the preseason than other team starters, that's showing you they need further evaluation of their roster and their starters. If a team loves where they are at quarterback and just doesn't want to get them hurt, like the New York Jets or other teams across the league, and they don't need to see their starters much, that shows you they pretty much know what they have. If the starters are playing more than not, that shows you they don't know what they have. So, yes, I value what I see from starters in the preseason.
Okay, number two. If Tennessee were to open the season in Dublin, Ireland, the way that Florida State and Georgia Tech will tomorrow, what is the dream opponent for you to see Tennessee in Dublin?
Notre Dame. Playing Notre Dame in Ireland, where you have so many Irish fans, obviously, I think would be really cool. I mean, it could be kind of, first off, a ton of Tennessee fans would go. I know the number's like 10 or 15,000 Florida State fans that are there. So you'd have a lot of Tennessee fans that would make the trip to Ireland. But Tennessee versus Notre Dame in Ireland would be cool. I've actually, today on the show, I put out my preseason college football playoff pick, and I've got Tennessee as the 11 seed in the playoff at Notre Dame as the 6 seed in the first round of the college football playoff this year. So it could be a dream matchup in the playoff. It would certainly be a dream matchup in Dublin, Ireland. I'd love to see it.
You know, we're going to have to do that on the show next week, like the Friday before the start of college football is usually the Stillman and Company expectations for college football. And I'm like, God, it's going to be so much harder to pick 12 teams than it is to do the 4 that we normally do. I actually
think about all
think
the 9-3 teams. Just real quick on that. That's what I had a hard time with. Think of all the possible 9-3 teams in the Big Ten and the SEC, and then try to whittle that down, because there's probably going to be a 9-3 team or 2 in the playoff in one of those 2 conferences based on how tough their schedules are. So trying to figure that out. I mean, Tennessee could lose at Oklahoma, lose to Georgia, lose to Alabama, and beat everyone else, which they're going to be favored in every other game, and get in the college football playoff. It's not guaranteed that way. If they go 10-2, it's guaranteed. So that's what's hard to predict and pick, are all those teams you bunch together that are going to be around 8-4, 9-3, and trying to pick 3 to 4 SEC and Big Ten teams from that group.
Speaking of Florida State is currently negotiating its exit from the ACC. Mediation between the two was unsuccessful. Florida State estimates that it will owe the ACC under the current agreement over $500 million to leave the conference. Chad Withrow, where is Florida State trying to go?
Anywhere but the ACC. It's 2 places. It's the SEC or the Big Ten. They take either. I think Clemson's they're a little bit more passive about it, but they're kind of in the same boat.
But the SEC has made it abundantly clear they're not interested in Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, but when has Greg Sankey really been clear on anything when it comes to that?
I know, but Feinbaum is like,
if it came down to them or the Big Ten, don't you think they would take them before the Big Ten would, if it was a competition and one was going to possibly pass the other?
I don't think the SEC would view Florida State as a losing element if they ended up in the Big Ten.
I think the SEC wants North Carolina. I don't think North Carolina is as motivated right now to leave for whatever reason. I think North Carolina is a valuable property for the Big Ten or the SEC.
The problem is that North Carolina is going to make you take NC State and Duke with them.
I mean, that's what I always heard about Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Also, if someone took them. I say that there's no rules. Like these charters amongst the states, and, Washington leaving Washington State behind, which is a big legal battle.
UCLA and Cal was a big one.
I mean, they do whatever they want, but for football. It's all for football. It's all for football TV. And schools can just do whatever they want and make up their own rules. So I get what you're saying. I just don't think any of that applies. I don't think they're going to have to take Duke and NC State with them or Wake Forest or anyone else. I think North Carolina is going to eventually do whatever they need to do for survival and to thrive. And North Carolina is a school that's going to be in a position to thrive, not just survive. So they're going to go where they need to. That's going to be the best financial situation. I think the SEC, if they're approached with either add these teams or they're going to go to the Big Ten and then the Big Ten is going to be more valuable than you, I don't think they're going to allow that. They'll try to add them too. The one thing I believe the SEC believes is that they are big on everyone being in a contiguous state to the other one. So not having that geographic spread like the Big Ten from coast to coast, I think they are serious about that. It has to be in an SEC state or bordering one to be on there. They don't want to skip states and go long distances to add teams to the conference. And clearly the Big Ten doesn't care about that at all.
Neither does the ACC with the addition of Stanford and
Correct.
Cal and SMU as far as that is concerned. Okay. What is your expectation for Nick Saban on College Game Day?
He's going to be awesome. I have no doubt about it. The dude is as polished as they come. He is going to be incredible. And Jared, everything he says on College Game Day is going to be news. When he has an actual opinion or he's critical of a coach or a program or a player or anything, it is going to be written about by a lot of different websites. It's going to be newsmaking every single week. I can't wait. I think he's going to be awesome on College Game Day. And it's the perfect spot for him. It's the perfect addition for ESPN.
So are there going to be too many people on the set, with Saban on that? Or is this going to be, they kind of got rid of David Pollock last year and maybe they get rid of somebody else? Because I don't know about you, but there's too many people. I want to hear Saban talk. I don't want to hear some of these other guys talk.
Yeah, if they get rid of anybody, I hope it's Desmond Howard.
Me too.
Just personally. I don't think he offers nearly as much as anyone else. Pat McAfee's a change of pace. Kirk Herbstreit's great. He was the best part of it for years and years. He needs to stay. I think Reese Davis is an excellent host. Lee Corso's not going to do much. He's done less and less every year, so he'll just be on a few segments. So that's not going to overly crowd everything. I'm with you. I want to hear more of Saban than Desmond Howard. So, and I thought David Pollock was fine. So if they're willing to get rid of David Pollock, maybe they make a move with that, outside analyst part with Desmond Howard. But it's still going to be a good show. I mean, I think that's one of the more well-produced shows in sports television. It has been for years. And Nick Saban's only going to add to it.
Okay, what did you think of Netflix's Steve McNair documentary?
I thought it was a well-produced, slick, Netflix-produced story about Steve McNair and the murder. It had the footage of the investigators' interviews with Neely and Big Daddy Gaddy and everyone else. I thought it was well put together. It's one of the more well-produced pieces on Steve McNair I've seen. There's no new information in it. For everyone who lived through it, and I was right next to the crime scene reporting for a different radio station at that time. So I lived through it. I was at Ronald Surpass's press conference announcing that it was a murder-suicide. I was looking for myself in the documentary there. There's nothing new about it, but it is very well done. I thought Jeff Fisher was very dramatic, but that's who he is when he's telling stories. I thought he did a really good job in it. I was impressed.
Might have also bent the truth a little bit, but that's
yeah. Look, it's
par for the course with Jeff Fisher.
He's a good storyteller, right? Like he's a great storyteller.
Keyword being story, but yes.
Yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. It was well produced, but no new information at all. But I think Titans fans will enjoy it. They'll look back at Steve McNair.
I think the thing we have to remember is that that documentary is not for us. So as much as it's you're saying no new information or whatever, the average person living in Idaho probably doesn't know as much about the Steve McNair murder as we do that saw I don't say saw it, but saw everything that happened when it all happened.
Yeah, and here's what I really enjoy about it. It's more the fun. Brad Hopkins is a part of it and other former Titans, but it's a look back at that 99 season. They really go in depth with that and what Nashville was like when the team moved here and the reaction of players and coaches at that point, that it was like Nashville's a cow town when they got here. There's nothing to do. Downtown was nothing. And their reaction moving from Houston to Nashville was like, what have we gotten ourselves into? What is this exactly? And how that 99 season galvanized everyone and how big of a part of that Steve McNair was. So that was really cool to watch. I mean, all the murder stuff, that's the juicy stuff that Netflix wants. And that you're right. Someone in Idaho or Montana knows nothing about that story. We know everything about it. That was the least interesting piece of the documentary to me. The football stuff and the way it was produced, that was the most compelling part.
What do you remember the most about covering the Steve McNair murder?
Well, I was downtown to watch fireworks already. And my phone starts blowing up, and you get word that something's happened with Steve McNair, that there's a murder downtown that's possibly Steve McNair. And then I get called to go call in reports before really before the tailgating started for the fireworks. We got down there early. And I walk right up to the old radio station, and I'm doing reports on Steve McNair. I just remember more than anything that day, that was one of the first viral moments, I think. This was pre-Twitter probably, or maybe right at the beginning. But it was one where people were texting each other about it in 2009. Everyone was talking about it in Nashville. You look down, you got 37 missed text messages because it was such a big story. And being right there next to it, the amount of people who just showed up in Steve McNair jerseys to the crime scene, and the cops having to get people away from the actual condo because of that. It was a wild day, and something I'll always remember.
What did you make of Joe Rexrode and Paul Kaharski screaming at each other this morning?
I thought it was, and having worked with Paul a long time, I thought it was Paul kind of at his best. Of needling someone. I thought it was very funny by him. Him giving the definition of what a rant is to Joe was very funny. I just dropped my daughters off at school and was driving back and heard them yelling at each other, and it was quite entertaining. I think point Paul on it because, and I certainly don't always agree with Paul in every argument. I've been a part of many of them with him, but wasn't much of a rant as much as instructions from Joe on high school football. And by the way, I agree with everything he said about high school football and everything that goes along with it.
And you are a high school football purist.
What now?
You are a high school football purist.
Yeah. You know what's funny about that? I don't know anything about high school football anymore.
Really?
Like the moment that I stopped hosting that show.
You did that show for 20 years.
I was watching a game last night. I'll still watch some of it. I don't know any of these coaches. I don't know anything. It's amazing how out of sight, out of mind it is. I still love it, and I'll catch a game when I can. I'm going to go to the DCA game tonight because that's where my daughters go to school. But I don't know anything about it. I don't know what's going on with different teams, with different coaches. And Jared, 6 years ago, I could have told you every coach in the Mid-State. If you gave me a school, I could probably tell you the coach at that school. I'm still pretty good with mascots and colors. But I don't know who's coaching what school, and I know nothing about the players anymore.
That is wild to me. I remember when you and Mayor Cooper got into it during the COVID year. I mean, that was some serious heat back in the day.
I remember way back in the day, James Franklin would take a helicopter to go recruit, and he'd call my high school football show each week and check in on where he was going, which was brilliant by him. I mean, it's amazing how little I know now. And that goes with anything. The brain can only process so much at a time.
Sure.
And you can only really know so many people at a time is what I've read somewhere. Again, I don't know because my brain can only process so much at once. High school football is one of those things that while I still love and appreciate it, the moment that I moved on from it, it was dead to me in my brain. It's like it's a part of my life. I can remember doing it, but I can't remember specifics about it.
Well, you brought up the flying around on the helicopter. It made me think of Rudy Kalis back in the day when Rudy used to take the helicopter on Channel 4.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think Rudy still keeps up with high school football in the Mid-State or no?
No way.
No shot. Rudy.
No chance. No chance Rudy Kalis knows anything about high school football. Those high school football TV shows locally were always so much fun when I was growing up, and even watching it when I'd record it and get home from our high school football radio show. It was so much fun to watch that. I can pretty much guarantee you that if you said a player Like Patrick Turner is a good example. When I started in radio, Patrick Turner was the guy at
Good pasture. Yeah.
And Philip Fulmer in Tennessee were after him, and then he goes to USC as a wide receiver. But that's a name, if you tell me, I remember covering Patrick Turner. Certain Golden Tate. I covered Golden Tate at Pope John Paul II. There are guys I remember talking about a lot in high school football that went on to play in the NFL or big college stars that I'll always remember. But outside of that, it's a black hole, man. It's a blank spot in my brain.
Chad Withrow. He will be out, though, according to him, at the DCA game tonight. So I guess that's what you're now a DCA fan. You've gone from being
say hello. I'm a DCA fan because I pay them. Usually works the other way. People pay you and then you're a fan of them. But I am a DCA fan because I pay them because that's where my kids go to school. And I will be watching DCA and Ezel Harding tonight. Big Joe is a DCA family also on the morning show with you guys. So I'm looking forward to it, man. Football is here, Jared. We got high school football tonight. We got a college game tomorrow. We got about 3 or 4 other games no one cares about tomorrow. But then starting next Thursday night, we're here. We've made it through the long, dark desert of no football season, and we have arrived.
Please, and I hope you take this seriously, please follow the guidelines of the Joe Rexrode High School Football Decorum Handbook.
I will not be yelling at any coaches. I will not be yelling at any players. This is my Joe Rexrode oath that he listed today. I won't be yelling at the referees. I'm not going to be doing any of that. I swear to Joe that I will be doing none of those things. And congratulations to Paul on, I thought, getting the best of that argument this morning.
Yeah, well, Joe's on my list because he was saying that I was too afraid to go on the show with him while I was on Sirius XM working Joe, but make of that what it is.
I really miss Jared versus Joe when it doesn't happen.
Well, it'll be happening from now until, I don't know, probably around December 20th.
Well, I don't think it happened this past week.
It did not. It did not. I was in Canada.
It's a huge disappointment when I'm in my truck at that time of day and it doesn't happen. So let's get back to it, boys.
Chad Withrow, as always, joining us on the program from Outkick. Enjoy the game, Chad. We'll talk soon.
All right. Talk to you next week. Yep.
It's become a weekly thing. The pre-New Orleans 53-man roster. Yeah. We'll do it next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
roster spots do you think are up for grabs here with a couple of days to go?
And then traditionally, there's probably 4 or 5 real spots. Those last 4 to 6 players, depending on position, and so those are the things that we'll be really keyed in on over this last game here, and getting ready to make decisions. Again, special teams plays a huge role in all that too.
Okay, so that was Brian Callahan, and Brian Callahan says, yeah, there's probably some spots that are still up for grabs in the New Orleans game, probably about 4 of them or so, and, who knows. Now, let me say this. I think they probably have a good idea as to who is going to make this team. I think they probably feel pretty comfortable about it, but I'm not convinced there's 53 guys on this team that I would say, oh my God, they have to have them. And I hope the Titans feel the same way, because what that would then allow them to do is to claim other players and not feel bad about it. Not feel bad about, oh gosh, we want to claim this tackle who could be our swing tackle, but we don't want to lose this guy. That is something that I hope they at least are thinking, at least on the same line as I am. So here you go. This is the pre-New Orleans 53-man roster. There are some changes from last week, which we'll get to. Quarterback, 3, Levis, Rudolph, Willis. Now, some of you guys are trying to talk me into this idea that the Titans would be better off keeping one of these guys that are one of the 4 or 5 as opposed to keeping Malik on the roster. And I just don't think that's the case. Again, I look at it like this. I think every team in the NFL needs to have a third quarterback, and Malik's money is fully guaranteed. So why not just leave Malik on the team? And I think that's what they're going to do. So I think it will be 3. Again, Levis, Rudolph, Willis. Running back, 3, Spears, Pollard, and Haskins. Again, they said they're going to keep 3. I would keep 2 because I'd try to get Haskins or Chestnut to the practice squad. They're not going to do that. So because of that, I think they keep the better back. It's Haskins. The more reliable back is Chestnut, but I think they'll keep Haskins, who's probably a more dynamic special teams player than Chestnut. So Spears, Pollard, and Haskins. Receiver. We have gone 7 every time we've done this. Receiver, 6. Hopkins, Ridley, Boyd, Burks, NWI, and Jaquan Jackson. I think all 6 guys are locks to make the team. I don't think there is really any question at all as to if those guys are going to make it. The only thing I could see is if the Titans were to pull off a, Burks trade similar to the Jahan Dotson trade from yesterday, which I don't think they're going to do. And so Mason Kinsey, who has been on the roster the last couple of weeks, Mason Kinsey is off the roster. I just think that they can probably slip him through to the practice squad, and I think Jaquan Jackson's going to be the punt returner, so that opens up a spot. Hopkins, Ridley, Boyd, Burks, and NWI and Jackson. Tight end, 4. This hasn't changed. Okonkwo, Wiley, Vanette, and David Martin Robinson. By the way, I have a bone to pick with Paul and Joe from earlier today, talking about Philly said that David Martin Robinson's going to be better than Chicken Josh Wiley. I said it wouldn't be a surprise if that was the case. And it is not because I think David Martin Robinson, whoa, look at what he's doing in these preseason games. It's that I think Chig sucks and Wiley's always hurt. And I stand by that. Offensive line, as of now, 8. J.C. Latham, Peter Skoronsky, Lloyd Cushenberry, Dylan Radens, Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT, Andrew Rupchich, Jaron Christian, and Daniel Brunskill. And Jaron Christian, definitely a question mark. Brian Callahan asked about the swing tackle yesterday, talked about Jalen Duncan. If Jalen Duncan is this team's swing tackle, then, ladies and gentlemen, we're in some trouble. I'm just telling you right now, if he's the swing tackle, then this football team is in some serious trouble. Defensive line, 4. Last week we had 5, but I've decided Quentin Bohanna is not going to make it. Simmons, Sweat, Joseph Day, and Keandre Coburn. Everybody else is all the same. They can get them through to the practice squad, and thus they will and call somebody up for the New Orleans game. And then maybe if there's an injury or something like that, they will make the decision to put somebody on the active roster if they go ahead and IR somebody else. Outside linebacker, 5. So we had 4 plus Arden Key's suspension. Well, now we have 5 because Arden Key, according to Jeffrey Simmons, is supposedly not going to be suspended. Landry, Key, Weaver, Harrell, and Shane Ray. And the other guys, they're not doing enough out there to earn a spot. And Shane Ray is a question mark at best. But I think that they brought him in for a reason. And so I think they're going to put Shane Ray on the football team. So again, Landry, Key, Weaver, Harrell, and Ray. Inside linebacker, 5. Murray, Gibbons, Campbell, James Williams, the former Miami safety they've converted to linebacker. TD talked me into that yesterday. TD says he thinks he's making the team. He thinks he's taking people's heads off. He thinks he's this, that, the other. And so because of that, and again, it wasn't like TD thought that he was going to, be a Pro Bowl or anything like that. But I was like, so you think he's making the team? And TD said, yeah, that's enough for me. James Williams over Otis Reese. And I have Cedric Gray on the team, but I have a question mark next to him because I do wonder if you're the Titans, do you think about going the IR route when it comes to Cedric Gray? Do you think about it? And I say think about it because, well, he hasn't done, I haven't noticed him one time. It's like I said to TD yesterday, I don't even know what number he wears because he's done so little. But he was picked in the 4th round, and you got to be Des Fitzpatrick bad to get cut. And let me just give a word of advice to the Ran Carthon, Chad Brinker group, whatever. Let me just give a word of advice if they want to hear it. Don't cut that 4th round pick because it will bring Amy back to the things that she didn't like about John Robinson, and you don't want to do that. So just trust me on that and don't jump in and cut your 4th round pick, even though the guy shockingly has not done anything. Corner. I have 7, but I have one controversial one. Sneed, Awuzie, McCreary, Brownlee, Judy Lawley, Avery, and I have Farley because Farley's got guaranteed money no matter what. But I don't know if Farley actually can make this team. So as of now, I guess I have Farley, but let's see if he plays in the Saints game. And if he doesn't play in the Saints game, it wouldn't surprise me if they IR'd Farley and he just took another redshirt year and they tried one day to put it together. But he's got real guaranteed money. And so I could see them saying, well, if we think we can get him on the field at some point this year and he can help us, let's go ahead and not eat the cash. But whew. Safety, 5. This, I think, is pretty straightforward. Hooker, Adams, Diggs, Molden, Jackson. And that's Matthew Jackson, who's had some interceptions at the beginning of training camp. Got to give him his due. Got to give him his credit. And specialist, 3. Nick Folk, Ryan Stonehouse, and Morgan Cox. No, the guy that hit the 59-yarder is not making the team. Now, I have circled 5 guys. Haskins, Rupchich, Ray, Jackson, and Farley. And the reason I circle those 5 guys is because I would not hesitate to get rid of any of those guys if it meant I could claim a better player, particularly one who plays on the offensive line. So I'm not saying, oh, God, we can't afford to lose it. No, you can afford to lose Rupchich. It's not going to be the end of the world. Probably get all those guys through to the practice squad anyway. So the current 53, Levis, Rudolph, Willis, Spears, Pollard, Haskins, Hopkins, Ridley, Boyd, Burks, NWI, and Jaquan Jackson, Okonkwo, Wiley, Vanette, David Martin, Robinson, Latham, Skoronski, Cushenberry, Radens, PT, Rupchich, Christian, and Brunskill, Simmons, Sweat, Joseph Day, and Coburn, Landry, Key, Weaver, Harrell, and Ray, Murray, Gibbons, Campbell, Williams, and Gray, Sneed, Awuzie, McCreary, Brownlee, Judy Lally, Avery, and Farley. Hooker, Adams, Diggs, Molden, Jackson, Folk, Stonehouse, and Morgan Cox. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. It is a Fireball Hot Take Friday. One more preseason game to go. And then, well, one little off week, and we can stand one off week, and then we're home free. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game. Okay, we've made it, folks. College football weekend starts tomorrow. And I know it's only one game, and it's Georgia Tech, Florida State. Florida State's a top 10 team, so it's not a terrible game. But it kind of hit me this morning when I was thinking about the start of college football season, and I'm very excited. I know Caroline says I hate college football. Caroline's wrong. I just don't care about recruiting classes for 2027 like Caroline does. So I don't hate it. I just don't care that much. And I think there's a big difference between the two. I care when the games are on. And so tomorrow I will watch the game. But I was thinking about the excitement of it, right? College football's back, and, this year who's going to make the playoff, and everything all kind of hit me at once. This is a new era of college football. Florida State is ranked 10th. And 10th, while it's certainly nothing to scoff at, 10th was not that big of a deal 5 years ago. 10th now means you're in the playoff. Everybody's going to make the playoff. It's like Chad Withrow said about trying to go through the Big Ten and SEC schools and who's going to be a 9-3 team that makes the playoffs and who's going to be a 9-3 team that misses the playoffs. This is a totally different ballgame than what we're used to in college football. Just like when they used to let the AP decide who the national championship was a totally different ballgame than the BCS. And then the other thing that hit me was tomorrow when College Game Day starts. I think it starts at 8 a.m. tomorrow, although you might want to check that. I'm not totally sure. Nick Saban will be at the desk. Now, I know Nick Saban retired. I know they hired Kalen DeBoer. That's a very good hire. And I know I've seen the pictures of Kalen DeBoer having modernized Nick Saban's office. It looked like grandma's house. And now all of a sudden it looks kind of like a more modern, is the right way to say it, a more modern head coach's office. But Nick Saban is going to be on the desk tomorrow on College Game Day, which means Nick Saban is not going to be on the sideline coaching college football. I'm not an Alabama fan, though I don't root against Alabama. I don't necessarily root for Alabama, but I do root for Nick Saban. And I've always rooted for Nick Saban. And one of the reasons that I've always rooted for Nick Saban is because the couple of times that I've spent time with Coach Saban when I was with Floyd or when Coach Saban called after Floyd passed away, like, I really enjoyed the guy that Nick Saban is, and it made me want to root for him. So while college football is completely unrecognizable to what it was 5 years ago, we pay the players now. They can transfer wherever they want to go with no penalty. We got 12 teams getting in the playoffs. The Pac-12 doesn't exist anymore. We're going to have 12 teams again in the playoff. The one thing that stood out to me that I was like, wow, this makes me feel a certain way was the fact that Nick Saban is not going to be on the sidelines this year. Ladies and gentlemen, we made it. Enjoy the college football this weekend. Enjoy the preseason game on Sunday. And then we're home free. Everybody have a great weekend. Stillman & Company. We'll see you all Monday at 2.